Hey guys. Here's part 7 of What If Naruto Was a Mokuton User. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 18. Kunomori, the Empty Forest. Kunomori, the Empty Forest. As far as you can avoid it, do not give grief to anyone. Never inflict your rage on another. If you hope for eternal rest, feel the pain yourself, but don't hurt others. Omar Khayyam, stupid Konan-chan. You should thank her for not warning Nagato. Yeah, that would have been far more annoying, White Zetsu agreed with his darker half. Still, the Geto Mazo is buried, but isn't damaged by such an attack. We can easily summon it back. And the Jinchuriki? Did our plan work? Of course it did. Both halves of Zetsu laughed when they resurfaced in a hideout on the northern border between Aim and Kusugakure. This hideout was known only to Zetsu, a place where even the foolish alliance wouldn't look, because Naruto had no knowledge of it. As the dual-colored Zetsu rose up, 3 white clones gave a cheery salute. Just in time, boss. Number 2-2. The second said proudly. Me 3, where's the 4th? Black Zetsu ignored the poopun. In spite of spending so much time near the white Zetsu, he had never understood their fixation with the inefficient way humans disposed of their bodily waste materials. He's with you? The first clone looked at the second. No, not with me, the second shrugged, turning to the third. I thought he was behind you. Ugh, shut up, Black Zetsu grimaced. He looked at the hall. The tiny window between sensing Konan's approach and her entering the cave had actually been insufficient. At least the Jinchuriki are here. That means, yes, Madara's body is a lost cause. Bummer. I'd rather lose him than having to wait until the Bijou reform. That would have been boring. What should we do? The 3 clones chorused, happily awaiting orders. They cared but a little for the destruction of Madara's body. Help the others. Spread chaos, Black Zetsu commanded. He had intended Akatsuki to eliminate the key players of the alliance. That Kisame failed, and Konan betrayed him, was a disappointment. Still, the truly crucial battle was taking place between Nagato and Naruto. All else was merely a sideshow, although the alliance was suffering great losses due to all the disguised Zetsu clones. He had successfully turned the Kumogakure troops against those of Iwagakure, only after putting down one fake corpse of Kumo's Jinchuriki. The Raikage was indeed an overly emotional man when it concerned his little brother. Emotional people were so easily manipulated. None of these fools realized that the entire war against Amigakure was merely a charade. The more shinobi died, the fewer would be left to oppose Zetsu's plans in the wake of this war. Using a few hundred clones to create confusion, letting them cause bitter battles between friends and allies, it had all part of his plan. Divide and conquer. Konoha, Suna, Kiri, all the villages would come out of this war weaker than at the start. Yes, the Jubi would not be all-powerful at the very start. That time frame would be the most dangerous. And Zetsu couldn't allow the hidden villages to pose a threat to his mother. I wonder if Mei-chan can keep the alliance in order. White Zetsu snickered. She'll try. Powerful as she may be, she will still fail. They aren't very unified, are they? We've wasted enough time, Black Zetsu grunted. Let's go. It is time to fetch our little puppets. Some time earlier, dark pants, dark shirt, green flak jacket, his clothing mattered little to him. That it could get damaged mattered even less. The only exception was his sash. The brown-orange sash which Ajisai had given him. A sash which had received a cut. Tall as a mountain, the Juchiman cannon towered over the battlefield. And yet pain had been able to push it back. Shinra Tensei, was all that he had said, after which a massive force pushed Naruto back. Standing on top of the statue's head, his feet rooted within the construct, Naruto never expected the leader of Akatsuki to have such power. Deep tracks were left in the muddy soil, a reminder of how the cannon had been pushed back. Below, Naruto saw pain. Or one of the pains. There had been 5. Extending his senses, Naruto tracked down the others. The other 4 were indeed near, while there were 2 more with the same signature hiding on what seemed to be a giant lizard of sorts. Expecting trouble while dealing with one pain, Naruto was not too happy with the realization that there were 7. He hoped that the others would be fine. Konan and Kisame had been there, and for whatever reason Jiraiya stood at their side, rather than at the side of Konoha. If not for the 7 bodies of pain, Naruto would try to influence the other battles. Once more he looked at the sash. The force had damaged the cannon, and splinters had flown off. One of said splinters had ended up ripping the cloth. Pain had dared to harm the gift from Aegisi. The crimson lines surrounding Naruto's eyes only added to the effect of the glare. Slit pupils stared down. 5 pairs of rippled eyes stared up, impassive as always, and then the view in one pair dulled. Only at the very last moment had Pain noticed the attack. Having exhausted much of Tendo's Deva Path's chakra, it was left weakened and vulnerable. For some reason beyond Nagato's understanding, Naruto had picked up on that, and intended to exploit it while he could. How futile, Tendo droned, its voice impassive. As if he had not just seen the tree roots lash up from the ground and tear Ninjendo, human path, to pieces. Pain knew that Ninjendo's talents were relatively useless against Naruto. Much unlike those of Tendo. Still, that Naruto, even if he stood atop that wooden giant, kept the ability to manipulate the surrounding nature to such a degree was something Nagato had not expected. He thought Naruto would have needed to be in direct contact with the soil. It seems that construct is more troublesome than initially calculated. Tendo fell back a little, still waiting for his abilities to return. Shinra Tensei was powerful, but the time the path needed to recharge was one of the sole weaknesses this body had. Luckily the others could cover for that weakness. Shirato, Azura Path, discarded its Akatsuki cloak, and its body morphed. Naruto had precious little information on the Rinnegan and its abilities. He knew vague rumors of the 6 gods, or the 6 bodies of Kami, from back when he lived in Amigakure. But even Aegisi hadn't known anything beyond those vague descriptions. She, like the vast majority of the AIM shinobi, had never seen Pain. That had made Naruto cautious. Sure, he had felt Pain's power, the vast chakra reserves which the man had, but he knew nothing about the abilities which the man had. These 7 near-identical chakra signatures were disturbing him. Could they be clones? No, that didn't seem to be the case. They were solid, had varying appearances, and their abilities seemed to be unique too. One controlled some sort of gravitational field, which rendered that Pain weak. After using it, Naruto had sensed how that Pain's chakra had dwindled after the attack. Another Pain, a stockier version with the same ripple pattern eyes and orange hair as the others, had shown the ability to absorb chakra when Temari had tried to attack him, and now the tallest of the 5 turned out to be some kind of demented Swiss army knife. The rockets flying from that Pain's arms caused significant explosions, strong to the extent that they managed to damage the Juchiman cannon. Seems like playing defense would be in my disadvantage, but I have to remain careful. Who knows what abilities the others might have? Naruto tried to keep calm. Ignoring the war that unfolded around him was the best option right now. The sooner he defeated Pain, the sooner this pointless war ended. But defeating Pain had sounded so much easier when they began to plan this war. With the abilities of the Rinnegan unknown, Naruto felt suspicious that Pain was so willing to sacrifice one of his bodies in order to rescue the body with the gravitational powers. He didn't want to assume that the destroyed Pain was useless in combat, so would there be some sort of trick? Were they more akin to puppets, and did Pain have the ability to somehow repair them? The one with the gravitation is waiting for his power to return, but the other one over there, the one with the diagonal row of piercings in his face, is also hanging back, Kurama noted. I saw Kurama. But that Pain is making a flanking maneuver. The Kyuubi cut Naruto off. He's moving towards the one that you just killed. Haven't you, seen the Rinnegan before? What's it capable of? Are you seriously asking me? Naruto couldn't see the 9-tailed fox, but judging by the sound in his head the fox was frowning. The Rikudo Sennin had the Rinnegan. And he created me and my brethren out of the Jubi. So, it can do pretty much anything? That is under the conjecture that this Pain has the same abilities. Naruto silently begrudged that the Bijou couldn't be a bit more specific, but considering how both their lives were on the line, he was inclined to trust that Kurama didn't know any more. One absorbs, one repels, and one turned into a living congregation of weapons. That left 2 others, plus the 2 that were hiding. Something roared, after which Naruto felt the statue under his feet shake from the impact. A giant rhino, also with Rinnegan for eyes, had assaulted the cannon. Damn it, so he has summons too? Naruto grit his teeth. The cannon grabbed the far smaller animal and crushed it, but immediately afterwards an enormous panda and a giant centipede came out of the woods. It would seem that one of the 2 Pains that are hiding has the ability to summon various kinds of creatures, Kurama noted dryly. As if Naruto hadn't noticed that by now. This is ridiculous. He fancies himself a god, so what did you expect? You're not helping. Naruto sprouted trees to attack the Swiss Army knife Pain, stopping that one from launching those pesky rockets, while pouring chakra into creating 3 new wooden dragons. Those would have to deal with the summons spawned by the hidden Pain. I'm a sitting duck out here. time to change strategy. Seated atop an enormous chameleon, Nagato kept his eyes closed. In spite of his newfound mobility, he still preferred to fight through his 6 paths. Especially while the complete powers of his adversary remained a partially unknown threat. He couldn't tell which option was more annoying, that the boy had hidden the true extent of his powers while he resided in Amigakure, or that he had suddenly grown by such an extent, attacking with 5 paths, while Chikashoto, Animal Path, produced summons which assaulted Naruto's wood dragons. Nagato had thought that he would easily gain the upper hand. This alliance was fragile, and he was confident that Kisame, Jiraiya, and Konan were able to eliminate the other leaders. Without those leaders, the allied forces would lose morale. But the true champion of the 5 villages was Uzumaki Naruto. Whether they knew it or not, Naruto was the only true threat which Nagato saw. The thunderous destructive power of a sage, the vast chakra reserves of a Jinchuriki, all combined with what was perhaps the most powerful Kekkei Genkai of them all. That even Nagato had seen no other option but to sacrifice one of his paths, in what was effectively just a simple attack from the boy, was evidence enough with regard to how big of threat he thought the boy was. Kisame had been eager to fight him, but Nagato knew that only he stood a chance. He put more attention to Jigakudo, Naraka Path, as it sneaked around the battlefield and approached the fallen Ninjendo, Human Path. Having so much experience in controlling the 6 bodies, he was not at all disturbed by seeing things 6 times. Or 5, as was now the case. However, he was accustomed to keeping himself out of the equation. Personally participating in battle was something he had not done since he summoned the Geto Mazo for the very first time. The day Hanzo and Danzo had betrayed them, the day Yahiko had perished, Konoha would pay for that. Konoha would bleed for the murder of his parents. Nagato would never forget, never forgive, and never rest until he got what he wanted. No matter how strong this Jinchuriki was, he would not allow anyone to stand in his way. And the first action through which that would be accomplished would be... Wait, Nagato kept his eyes closed, but frowned nonetheless. Where did it go? Tendo, Shirato, and Gekido were still locked in combat with the Jinchuriki, whom stood on top of the gargantuan wooden cannon statue. The summoned creatures were still entangled with the wooden dragons. Yet, where did Jigakudo go? Nagato muttered to himself. The signal was gone. He had been looking through the path's eyes, controlling its every move, and then, it just disappeared. It had just stood in front of the fallen Ninjendo, and then the signal just vanished. This had never happened before, not to him, especially not with the most essential of his 6 paths of pain. What was that? I touched that black thing, Naruto mumbled, answering Kurama's question. Only for a second, only to pull it out of the body of his fallen opponent. The pain he had killed first had worn the same sort of piercings, and the one that he had just decapitated was no different, except, when Naruto tried to examine this newly dead pain, he got a jolt of chakra through his fingers, a jolt which even Kurama felt, deeply hidden within the seal in which he resided. Whatever this pain figure is doing, this was just plain wrong. What do you mean? Think me bag. You see these bodies littered with those rods. Those things are some kind of chakra receptors. Whoever the real pain is, these bodies are controlled from a distance. Although this is as different from regular puppetry as I am from a regular fox, the voice had a pensive tone to it, which worried Naruto. If nothing else, he trusted Kurama's ability to analyze the situation. You're the one with centuries of wisdom and all, so, should we retreat? Don't act like a suck-up, it's unbefitting of you, Kurama grunted. And no, I doubt that a retreat is wise. Unless our estimations have been wrong, Akatsuki cannot have extracted my brethren from the recently captured Jinchuriki. If we retreat, Pain would get the time to seal them. And once we are the only target left, they'd just use that accursed statue against us. That would indeed be a disadvantage to us. No, we should try to defeat Pain now. Even if you cannot defeat him by yourself, you should wait for reinforcements. Why did you think I advised you to cooperate with those villages? Besides, for whatever reason one of the members of Akatsuki has retreated, even if she defeated that Kazekage girl. Konan? She defeated Temari? Of course she would. But I thought you said that she was the most loyal of Pain's underlings. She is, perhaps she was wounded. Perhaps there's something else in play. I don't know. Konan is a difficult person to fathom. I mean, the likes of Kisame and Haiden are easy enough to understand, but she joined Akatsuki for different reasons. Be on your guard, Kurama warned, before he fell silent again. The steady flow of chakra which the bijou provided seemed to increase a little, much to Naruto's pleasant surprise. He knew he needed the chakra. Either that, or he needed to find a moment of peace to gather more energy from nature. Naruto sighed. The whole plan revolved around defeating pain. The real pain. Naruto suspected that it was the one with the weird gravitational powers. A bounty hunter knows the target before the target knows the hunter, was a lesson which Kakuzu had drilled into Naruto's head. That is why we hold back our abilities while we can, so that we can keep the advantage even in case the enemy shows something unexpected. A basic lesson that Naruto had taken to heart at first, yet forgotten in his anger. The loss of Aegisi had made him reckless. Kurama had been right that showing the Juchumen Kannon in the middle of Konoha had been unwise. And now, at the start of this battle, Naruto had immediately shown his strongest ability as well. Meanwhile, Pain had hidden so much of his true ability that Naruto was forced to analyze the man's style during combat. If Kakuzu had still been alive, Naruto knew that he would have been scolded to no end. I know, Kakuzu. Analysis is just as important to skill as any other offensive jutsu. Naruto played along with his oddly nostalgic train of thought. Why had killing that man felt so empty? Kakuzu had killed Kakashi, killed Sakura, and ruined his life. And yet he had seen that stupid proud expression when the man perished. Perhaps it was what Aegisi once uttered: hating a shinobi for executing a mission is just as pointless as hating a kunai for hitting its mark. Maybe that was why she had so easily accepted it when he told her that he came from Konoha, in spite of the things Konoha shinobi had done to the people of AIM. Kakuzu wasn't much different, in that contrast, as he only really cared about money. Money, which he usually obtained in the most efficient way possible. What happened to Team 7 was barely something personal to Kakuzu. Just another bounty, a mission issued by Zetsu, the real perpetrator. Naruto told himself to keep calm, to keep analyzing pain, to not allow himself to let hatred blind his senses. The gravitational pain was less powerful than the times Naruto had met him before. Why? Was his chakra somehow spread over these bodies? If Kurama was correct, and these bodies were somehow controlled through those black rods, then it was likely that this assumption was correct. Regardless, their combined power was vast. Beyond what Naruto had expected. The varying, and otherworldly, abilities only made this even more against his favor. I gotta get back to the Kannon, Naruto muttered. He couldn't allow the construct to be destroyed. The Juchumen Kannon was too big an investment of chakra to surrender it easily. Yet, despite that fact, Naruto had still left a Moku Bunshin in control of the statue, using it as a decoy while he took down the unusual pain that tried to approach the pain which he had previously slain. Kurama had come with that suggestion, and although Naruto had to admit that it worked perfectly, as pain had been caught completely off guard, the risk of using the Kannon as a mere distraction was one which he didn't like all too much. The amounts of chakra poured in that single jutsu was enough to create a dozen wood dragons. And those things had a basic level of sentience, much unlike the Juchumen Kannon, which needed to be controlled directly. It really sucks that I can't let the Juchumen Kannon function as an automaton yet. That would require even more chakra, brat. Kurama suddenly decided to lecture his prison. With nothing else to do, the Bija at least found it entertaining to show the boy how little Naruto knew, compared to him. Giving both form and content to matter is already a difficult thing. That you instinctively found ways to provide those dragons with a limited form of intelligence is nothing short of impressive, considering how it is a skill that approaches what the Rikudo Sennin did with the Banbutsu Sozo no Jutsu, creation of all things technique, which is common tongue for creating things out of nothing but your own chakra, you illiterate fool, which requires more chakra for animated objects. Naruto nodded. That was something which he, even without the odd description, knew all too well. Adding a pre-programmed sort of consciousness to his jutsu increased the chakra cost. Wait. There are two options you have here. 1. You immediately go back to that statue of yours, and try to salvage it. I highly doubt that this pain would not have found some weakness in it by now, or otherwise gathered the chakra to destroy it through some of his jutsu, but there's always a chance he didn't. And 2. Refuel. You've wasted quite a lot of your reserves on that statue. I prefer that you didn't expend too much of my chakra yet, not while Pain hasn't shown all his cards. And without you taking the time to gather more chakra, your sage mode will not be lasting for that much longer. I'm sure that you can sense that. It is, however, a gamble. You'd risk losing that statue. But if he's able to take down the Kannon, it won't matter if I get back there right away. Exactly. Because you'd be out of chakra, and ripe for the picking. Let it be known that Kurama wasn't known for his limitless optimism, and even less for embellishing his words. Naruto, however, had gotten somewhat used to it by now. Even appreciated Kurama's blunt input, as the creature was far older and had much more experience than him, although not arguably wiser. In this case, Naruto easily accepted that Kurama was correct. Sage mode was indeed running out. And while gathering energy was easy enough, he couldn't gather while expending it at the same. Up till now, he had covered that weakness by using his dragons or Kanon to keep his enemies at a distance. But against Pain wasn't an ordinary opponent. He wasn't an opponent he could afford to have weaknesses against. And worse, Pain wasn't even the opponent Naruto was willing to lay down his life for. Not unless he found a way to murder Zetsu beforehand, at least. Stopping Pain was an essential part of stopping Akatsuki, but it had little to do with Naruto's personal quest for vengeance. Zetsu had killed Ajisai. Zetsu was responsible for ruining both his old and his new life. Zetsu had, Naruto sighed. He closed his eyes and forced himself to calm down. He had to keep his emotions in rein if he wanted to efficiently gather more chakra from nature. Submerging himself within the endless ocean of energy always carried risks. Being overwhelmed by the energy was not something he could afford right now. His own chakra reserves were vast for a human. They paled in comparison to Kurama, on the other hand. But even the mightiest of the Bijou could not compare himself to the energy of the world itself. If Kurama's ominous words were true, only the Jubi could compare itself to such a vast power. To say that Nagato was annoyed was an understatement. Gods were not supposed to bleed, and Naruto just inflicted a wound. Somehow, and Nagato wasn't sure how, the boy had destroyed Jigakudo, the path capable of restoring the other paths. And that while the boy was still fighting 3 other paths at the same time. Senjutsu was truly an annoyance. It was something Nagato already knew, having gauged the strength of his old sensei. But the senjutsu of which Jiraiya of the Sannin was capable paled in comparison to that which the boy showed. Perhaps it was because the boy, as a Jinchuriki, had far greater chakra reserves of his own, thus making the boost in power from senjutsu exponentially greater as well. Oh well, it does not really matter now, Nagato spoke up through Tendo. My powers have returned, and I gathered enough chakra now. It is time to end this silly little struggle, and teach the boy the errors of his way. The boy was skilled, and it was irking Nagato that he turned out to be an even better sensor than him, judging by the fact that he had apparently taken out Jigakudo from such range. Rinnegan or no, the link to nature that Naruto's senjutsu offered was something beyond Nagato's abilities. In all aspects, Naruto had somehow surpassed himself within just this little amount of time. This Naruto was nothing like the one who had resided in Amachikyo for a while. Pain had made the boy grow. The gigantic statue lunged at Tendo, its massive hand attempting to grab the animated body. While it was an attack from behind, the shared field of vision ensured that the paths of Pain had practically no blind spots. As long as they were positioned well enough, at least. In the knowledge that Naruto was able to literally turn the environment in his advantage, Nagato had kept the 3 paths close, constantly watching each other's back. Tendo jumped up, and while he distorted the gravity around him, the body flew higher and higher. Almost as high as the giant bird which Chikashoto had summoned earlier, that was now overlooking the battlefields. The arrival of the Reikage had gone exactly as Zetsu had told. The man bought the deception, and relentlessly assaulted the old yet powerful Tsuchikage. At this rate the faster and younger Reikage would soon gain the upper hand. Along with the hundreds of white Zetsu, that would throw the battlefield in complete disarray. In spite of the numerical superiority of their enemies, Nagato hoped that Amageku's forces would be able to exploit that advantage to the fullest. Likewise, the Mizukage and her forces were quickly losing ground. With Tsunade locked in combat with Jiraiya and the Kazekage taken out of the equation as well, Nagato knew that defeating Naruto would be the tipping point. The boy's defeat would break the spirit of the alliance, and while Jigakudo was taken down, Nagato had access to all the skills of each of his paths. All he needed to do was restore his 6 paths of pain, and he could wipe out this brittle shinobi alliance. Floating in the sky, Tendo looked down upon the frustrated boy who stood atop the wooden gargantuan. It was sturdy, extremely so. To a degree that even Shurado's rockets could not damage it badly enough for the boy not to be able to repair it. The statue was filled with a chakra which made Nagato hesitant of using Preta Path's ability. Who would know what risks Senjutsu chakra carried? Zetsu had mentioned Naruto's moments of insanity before he had managed to master Senjutsu, even if the slippery spy had been silent about many other things. But strength did not matter. Size did not matter. Chakra was irrelevant. He was Pain. He was God. He would teach the world the error of its ways. And the first lesson of Pain would be to show that resistance was futile. The boy had taken down Jigakudo, but he would bleed for that transgression. He'd be an example for all to see. Shinra Tensei. It was always a calming sensation. That detached feeling he had after opening himself for the energy of nature. He used to be unable to control it, losing himself in the boundless realm of nature. But now he was somewhat accustomed to it. That intimate embrace with the world itself, it granted him power far beyond the limitations of regular people. Although he knew that he would never have been able to harness so much of nature's energy if not for his own vast reserves as a Jinchuriki, he couldn't imagine how Hashirama, who had not been a Jinchuriki, could have wielded such power. How a regular man could have become as strong as a Jinchuriki, the very people who contained the strongest chakra creatures known in the world. The Senju must have been a freak of nature, no pun intended, if he could master Senjutsu to the degrees which Madara had described. Ready? Naruto nodded in response to Kurama's question. Which was rather silly, now that Naruto thought about it. Kurama couldn't see him on the outside, could he? But since he was already rushing through the self-made forest, towards the clone he left battling the three pains, Naruto figured that Kurama would have understood his intent. Its chest area was blown apart, as one of the other paths of pain launched a massive blast of chakra, as if firing some sort of overpowered chakra cannon. Naruto could only grind his teeth in frustration as he saw the cannon topple down. Moments after, his Moku Bunshin grew from the nearest tree, showing considerable damage. It was still able to talk though. The cannon is powerful, but too slow. Even when I attack them from their blind spots, they still somehow manage to dodge, the clone reported. And while our opponent usually can't damage the cannon, pain is different, I figured, Naruto sighed. I'll have to change tactics, and use jutsu that are more subtle, and be a smaller target. The clone nodded haphazardly. Most of its left arm and shoulder was missing, and its neck had sustained damage too. The floating one with the gravitational powers was weakened for a while, but once he recharges he is easily the most dangerous. The other two cover for him. One can turn his body into a wide variety of weapons, including the cannon you just saw. The other, he paralyzed the cannon's arm. I think he did it by somehow absorbing the senjutsu chakra that was in the arm. Absorb, weaponry, and gravitation, got it. Anything else? The clone shrugged and disintegrated, no longer able to sustain its form. Naruto grimaced. While the Kyuubi had warned him about this, Naruto had hoped that pain wasn't strong enough to actually do it. Naruto knew he had gotten lucky with destroying the first pain, as it had been a body which pain had sacrificed. The second one he had taken down due to deception. But how was he supposed to fight these three at the same time? Taking one of Ajisai's sealing cards out of his sash, Naruto hoped that this distraction would work. It wasn't much of a surprise that the three pains were standing back to back, each carefully keeping watch for Naruto to attack them. The clone's observation that the gravitation pain was vulnerable for a short while after he attacked didn't seem so strange anymore. If not for that weakness, Naruto was sure that pain would have gone on the attack already. Still, it might be deception, as unlikely as that seemed. Pain was someone who seemed to be accustomed to overwhelming his enemies with the gifts of his Rinnegan, and did not appear to be someone who often fought on the limits of his capacity. Still, one mistake, Naruto knew that was all it would take for him to lose against pain. Then all you've got to do is make no mistakes, Kurama remarked. He has the advantage in the wide range of abilities, but I think you possess more chakra, brat. Don't doubt yourself while you should be focused on striking that fake god down. You're right. Thanks, Kurama. The three pains stood back to back, covering for each other, but that was exactly the problem of their current situation. Naruto threw the seeds, and the three dodged, thinking that the chakra-laden objects were some kind of bombs. Naruto grinned at the realization that they weren't completely wrong. One of the pains charged forward, the man's arm changing into some kind of bladed object. It was either a sword nor a spear. Naruto dodged, but only just. So far, he had taken down two of the pains due to deception, so it wasn't surprising that his next idea was based on the same concept. He didn't know whether or not they had realized that they had fought a clone, so it was reasonable to assume that they expected him to be injured or weakened. Naruto didn't know how much the Rinnegan could see, as this tactic would fail against any Hyuga, but he thought that this spur-of-the-moment idea was worth the gamble. The two other pains fell back, the one of which the clone had suspected that he could absorb chakra covering for the noticeably weaker gravitational one, both donning a confident smirk, just like the one which Naruto had dubbed the Swiss Army knife pain, although none of the three felt as pleased as Naruto did at the discovery that their eyes couldn't see through him like the Byakugan would. If that had been the case, Pain would not have believed the injuries which Naruto faked. Naruto dodged another swing, this time not being able to avoid the hidden blade that followed in the attack. The gash on his chest was somewhat painful, more painful than it should have been. Already working on it, Kurama muttered lazily, as Naruto felt the chakra from the nine-tailed fox flow to the poisoned wound. Keeping the act up, Naruto moved somewhat slower than before the injury. Now he didn't bother to stay close. He jumped back, appearing to try to create distance. And pain followed, only halting when it was already too late. It was obvious to Naruto that his opponent could see chakra, including that which he put into the plants. Pain saw the plants grow around him, but shrugged them off when they turned out to be too weak to hold him down. Tying you down wasn't my purpose, Naruto smirked. The habanero peppers which grew on the plant reached the end of their growth, and exploded into a biting cloud of dust. When Naruto had accidentally stumbled on this jutsu, which he named the Akai Chishio no Habanero, Red Hot Habanero, he had thought it could be effective against dojutsu. It turned out he was right. Even if it was just a second of distraction, it was enough for Naruto. The other two pains weren't really concerned by the pepper cloud, as the dust just fell out of the air when it came too close to the stocky pain, confirming the theory which Naruto's clone had regarding chakra absorption. But the Swiss Army knife pain was blinded. Naruto dropped the act, released the chakra he had been suppressing, and charged towards the man. With his connection to nature, Naruto didn't need his eyes to see his environment. His eyes closed, not to fall into his own trap. Naruto propelled his own wood-encased fist, plunging it straight into the piercing ornamented face of the unlucky pain. The force of the impact broke the man. His head literally exploded to bits. It turned out he was completely machine-like, parts flying off him as he fell down, dead. Not that this pain had been alive in the first place, but still. It was disabled now. One mistake, one mighty hit, and it was out of the equation, much to the ire of the two remaining pains. You're very strong, the pain with the gravitation powers spoke up. No one has ever given pain this much trouble before. No one else is as good as I am, Naruto smirked, creating a coffin around the fallen pain and dragging it deeply under the ground. After the suspicions that one of the pains could somehow restore the others, Naruto had decided to bury the ones he had beaten. He wasn't going to risk pain still somehow having a trick up his sleeve that would enable him to revive the others again. With the two that were still hiding atop their supposedly invisible summon, Naruto had no idea what kind of crazy jutsu Pain was still holding back. Such impudence! Pain raised his arm, the flat of his hand pointing towards Naruto. Bansho Tenin! Heavenly attraction of all creation. Wide-eyed, Naruto felt his body move towards Pain. With a simple command, however, he created wooden binds which stopped him from getting too close. Still, the pull remained, and the other Pain tried to exploit that moment. Tsurushi, poison ivy, Naruto grunted, stomping with his foot into the muddy soil. Plants sprouted underneath the feet of both Pains, ending the pull as the gravitation Pain evaded, enabling Naruto, in turn, to evade the attack from the chakra-absorbing Pain. Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu, Fire Release, Phoenix Sage Fire Technique. The latter Pain growled out, visibly agitated by Naruto's tactics. True, Naruto knew that fire would be the greatest weakness to his wood-based techniques. Kakuza had shown that on several occasions, often resulting in beatings for Naruto. But while he trained for himself, Naruto had no access to fire jutsu. He couldn't perform them by himself, nor could he ask Ajisai to use them against him. Sure, she had her explosive tags, but they were a far cry from a proper katan jutsu. Tags were, like the name implied, about the explosion, not about the fire. So Naruto was taken aback when Pain's flames hit his poison ivy. The resulting explosion forced him back, leaving his arms, which he held up in a futile attempt to block the flames, badly burned. Being caught completely off guard by the results of his own jutsu, Pain wasn't faring much better. Much worse, actually, as the damage done to Naruto was quickly healing. It was one of the advantages of being a Jinchuriki. Though Naruto's other arm was made out of tissue that responded to his Mokuton, making it easy to restore the damage. Aside from that, even while Naruto had been closer to the blast, Senjutsu also made him far more durable than Pain. Still, Gakido, Predapath, was merely an animated corpse. Technically the body was brought back to life, even though it remained as soulless as any regular corpse. The main advantage, it felt no pain, even though its functionality was compromised to some degree. Senpo Mokuton, Kanon Ryot, Sage Art would release. Kanon's hands, Naruto grunted, his teeth grinding while he tried to ignore the pain it caused of rushing so rapidly through the hand seals with his burned arms. He'd rather get stabbed than burned. Burns hurt like a bitch. From the earth underneath its feet, Gakido got surrounded by the two massive hands of the Juchuman Kanon. One hand to negate jutsu, the other to kill whomever it was holding. Naruto had not expected to pull out this jutsu already, but knew that he couldn't keep holding this particular jutsu back, not while he was presented with this opportunity. Now the 5 were diminished to 1. Naruto noticed that the other pain had used its jutsu, however weak it still was, to shield itself from the explosion. It had been forced in the direction where the other 2 were. The 2 who, much to Naruto's displeasure, were approaching rapidly. Meanwhile, Naruto felt that the captured pain was still not dead. Damn, the hands won't kill this bastard, will they? He mumbled irritably. Incapacitate him, Kurama urged. You do realize he hasn't been able to drain the chakra from those hands, right? So use another jutsu that suppresses the usage of chakra. With a lack of time to figure out a way to kill a guy who negated any regular jutsu, Naruto could think of only one thing. With his hands in a ram's seal, he shouted Senpo, Myo Jinmen, Sage Art, Gracious Deity Gates, knowing that it was a technique strong enough to keep even Kurama down, and if Madara's notes had been correct, it suppressed its target's usage of chakra as well. The hands of the cannon sank into the ground, but before Gakido could move, a number of red torii fell down atop of him, binding him. These red wooden gates weren't as large as the ones Naruto had used against Kurama, who was a far larger target, but did their job nonetheless. And now, to get rid of you completely, Naruto created a dome which enveloped both Pain and the dozen of torii. With everything wrapped up, Naruto forced it to sink into the ground, just like he had done with the other corpses of the Pain. Glaring up, slightly winded from the rapid succession of jutsu, Naruto looking into the purple eyes of Pain. Impressive, Nagato stated with a voice calmer than his actual mood. But this is where your futile struggle ends. While Naruto didn't know that Nagato was the true Pain yet, not even knowing the first thing about the man called Uzumaki Nagato, he had immediately realized that something was off about the man. The other Pains all had those black piercings and orange hair. But this Pain had straight red hair. The man's pale skin and emaciated appearance made him look sickly. If not for the chakra he radiated, Naruto would have dismissed the man as being no threat. Although it wasn't just the chakra, the man wore no Akatsuki cloak, revealing his thin body. Naruto could literally count his ribs. The man wore no cloak, however, because of the many black chakra rods that pierced his back. It made him walk a bit hunched, as if he needed to compensate for the weight. Your legs, Naruto frowned, sensing the familiar Zetsu tissue. The same kind which covered half of his own body. Shinra Tensei, the gravitation-wielding Pain, appeared next to Nagato, blasting Naruto into the woods behind, knocking the wind out of the younger Uzumaki. Bansho Tenin, Tendo followed with a second jutsu within a second, dragging Naruto back as if he was some kind of twisted human yo-yo. With fewer paths to control, Nagato could pour more of his chakra into Tendo, making it stronger and recover its powers at a faster rate. Being thrown around, Naruto could not stop himself in time. He landed in front of the one he had dubbed Skinny Pain, who proceeded to grab him by the neck. And now it ends, Nagato announced calmly. Naruto couldn't stay calm when he felt the chakra being drained from him, twisting around and punching Pain in the gut. He got out of Pain's grip, but couldn't say he liked the amused smirk he saw. His eyes widened in shock when Pain's arm transformed into some kind of cannon, charging a massive amount of chakra. Naruto ran, wanting to evade a blast like that, but the other Pain stood in his way. Another Shinra Tensei followed, pushing Naruto back. Straight into the line of Pain's Shura no Ko, chakra propulsion cannon. Do you see now that you never truly stood a chance, Uzumaki Naruto? Nagato drawled. Surrender, and bring peace to this war-torn world. Never, Naruto spat out the blood that he had coughed up. The thunderous explosion had left him wounded, both his real flesh and his Zetsu tissue. Not that that paused Naruto in any way. Your false peace will only create a world of suffering and fear. Foolish till the bitter end, Nagato sighed. I had hoped you to be better than this. All the lies, the hypocrisy, the endless bloodshed, it is all caused by the current system. It needs to be brought down. And you'll be the final step towards peace. Nagato threw him back, and Tendo stabbed him with 2 rods. Naruto felt the foreign chakra seep into him, which felt even worse now that the rods were piercing his flesh. 2 in his shoulders, 2 in his back, 4 in his legs, and then Tendo nailed down Naruto's arms. You fought valiantly, but ultimately your efforts were pointless. Nagato ignored the glare of the Jinchuriki. I will make you see the futility of your actions, he gestured behind him, as the last embodiment of Pain stepped into the clearing. She had left her summon behind, as Nagato longer felt the necessity of keeping her invisible. The battle was already won. You were destined to fail, Uzumaki Naruto, Chikashoto, Animal Path spoke up. Her voice similar, and yet still so hauntingly different. Her appearance, with the orange hair and the Rinnegan, had changed so much. And yet it was clearly her. The moment she stepped away from the trees she had been hiding behind, Naruto had seen it. Ajisai, do not worry, Uzumaki Naruto. You have caused me much damage, Nagato kept speaking through the animated corpse of Ajisai. After the Kyuubi is extracted from your body, you shall join the girl. Reunited, you two will live on as part of the 6 paths of pain. Nagato had overwhelmed Naruto in terms of power, breaking him just when Naruto had gotten a shimmer of hope that he could defeat pain. In his victory, Nagato wished to completely subjugate the rebellious Jinchuriki. If Naruto's will was broken, it would be much easier to control him through the rods that paralyzed him, to see the fate of his deceased girlfriend. Nagato knew that Konan would object to this tactic. But she too would come to understand that it was a necessity. She knew all too well that the world of shinobi was ruled by hatred. Mutual understanding was an impossibility, a foolish dream of a foolish man, a dream which Jiraiya had almost abandoned. Loss and despair would break the Jinchuriki, after which the Kyuubi could be extracted. The chain of hatred would be broken, and then, if only it were for a short time, peace would return to the world. I see peace, Ajisai whispered, seeing Naruto's tears. A very, very poor choice of words. Naruto's eyes widened, recalling her words. Love, happiness, those are things that barely exist in aim. There's too much violence, too much sadness, she had once confessed. She desired peace. A peaceful world which he had promised to give her, a world of peace in which they could grow old together, without sadness, without fear, a world of love and happiness. Naruto could never forget about her. How they had made love. How they had kissed and hugged. The words they had spoken, the promises they had made. He was all too aware of the 2 rings he wore, of his sash, the tangible proof of their time together. All those dreams. Pain had taken those dreams, and shattered them. The chakra receivers, embedded in Naruto's flesh, shattered along with them. The world around him shriveled, cowering in his rage. Trees withered and died. All the vegetation, all life that sprouted from the soil around him, it all perished. It no longer mattered. Nothing mattered. He dove deeper into the ocean of nature's energy than he had ever done before, abandoning his self completely, surrendering to the madness. The energy of nature, of the Kyuubi, of himself, it twisted and amalgamated into a sickening and dreadful chakra. With a roar, Naruto threw Tendo aside. With a roar, he released the chakra he drew from the world around him, without any regard for his well-being, or that of anything around him. Reckless rage brought by a pain even greater than that which he had felt when losing her. These insults, this horrible act of desecration, Naruto would never forgive it, never forget it, not until he drew his final breath. All throughout Amigakure, across the entire battlefield, people cowered as the repulsive empty presence washed over them, a chakra which even Samahata refused to absorb. The world held its breath, and its people could only follow accordingly. In fear, in despair, they would await what the rage of the strongest Jinchuriki would bring to their world. Pain had broken the will of Uzumaki Naruto, but Kunemori rose up, and in his wake he would leave a dead world, an empty forest, devoid of all hope and life. Chapter 19 Bleak. And now, farewell to kindness, humanity and gratitude. I have substituted myself for Providence in rewarding the good. May the god of vengeance now yield me his place to punish the wicked. Alexander Dumas. Ugh, what the hell? What kind of booze did I drink to get such a terrible hangover? He blinked, attempting to make sense of the blurry images which his eyes sent to his brains. It was not alcohol, a voice replied. You're shitting me, he grumbled back, feeling wobbly on his legs. The giant headache told him a different story. Perhaps that's why he only froze up after seconds had passed. Tsunade? He couldn't help but mutter. Yes, Jiraiya, it's me. Did it work? A second, younger, female voice sounded weakly. Yes, Ino, it worked. You've made me proud. Tsunade smiled warmly at the injured Yamanaka. Jiraiya shook his head, trying to make sense of the situation. Bit by bit, his sight returned to him. What he saw confused him. It looked like a major battle had just happened. His clothes were a mess as well. Tsunade looked like hell, with a rather big wound on her shoulder which was still in the process of healing. A wound that looked far too much like the sort that his Rinnegan inflicted. Don't tell me. I did that? The Toad Sage couldn't believe it. Is this some sort of crazy dream? He muttered, after his attempt to break the supposed genjutsu failed. It's not an illusion, dream, or alcohol-induced nightmare. Believe me, I've checked the situation on all 3 accounts. Tsunade turned to her old teammate. Are you free now? Free? What do you mean, free? That black rod you had in your chest, it acted as some kind of chakra receiver, the Senju explained patiently. You nearly killed Ino when she destroyed the darn thing. Nagato, Jiraiya cringed when the most recent of his memories returned to him. The discussion with Nagato, before his former student decided to show his true colors, about the possibility of Naruto, is it true that he's still alive? Jiraiya demanded. That his old students had turned into something that had to be stopped was a matter of priority, but nothing was more important than the fate of Minato's boy, Jiraiya's godson. Naruto has changed, but he is still alive, Tsunade frowned, confused by the new name. Surely you knew, since you were a part of Akatsuki just like he was. And who is this Nagato? I've never met Kunemori, nor did I ever meet any of the other members. Me being a part of the organization was supposed to be a secret, Jiraiya confessed. Nagato, he didn't completely trust Akatsuki. So he kept me in reserve, kept my connections to him and Konan a secret from all the others, while I acted as a spy for him. He doesn't trust Zetsu. Why did you join them, Jiraiya-sama? Ino decided to ask, ignoring the uneasy look on Tsunade's face. Losing someone dear to you is bad enough, but being blamed that you are responsible for that death is even worse, Jiraiya said bluntly. It was a coincidence that I met Konan, and I learned that Nagato was still alive as well. Those two being my old students, they were the only real bonds I still had left. It is why I decided to help them. Jiraiya, I'm sorry, yeah, I know you'd say that, Jiraiya said gruffly. You always mess up, and apologize later, Tsunade. But let's not waste time on living in the past. We've both done that for too long. The important thing right now is, where is Naruto? While I can see some merit in Nagato's plans to destroy the shinobi system, I'm not willing to sacrifice Naruto for that. Naruto is fighting pain, Ino grimaced. Whether it was because of the pain or the fact that she realized she had subconsciously dropped the suffix was something even she couldn't tell. He'll need our help. You two should stay here and heal up. Jiraiya turned towards the direction where he could feel an enormous amount of foul chakra. Whether he truly has Mokuton or not, Nagato is too powerful. Even with my full power, I doubt I can defeat him. You aren't going anywhere, Jiraiya, Tsunade commanded, grabbing the seemingly older man by his arm. I'm going to heal you first. You feel the magnitude of the brat's chakra just as well as I do. Whatever this pain, Nagato, or whatever his name is able of doing, if Naruto uses this much chakra, even we can't afford to just randomly jump into their battle. He uses Senjutsu, Tsunade, but Nagato has the Rinnegan dojutsu. This is no joke. There is no time to waste, or we'd risk losing everything. Jiraiya looked her in the eye. And don't try to pull rank on me. I'm done with that crap. Nagato was not sure what he was supposed to think. He had defeated the Jinchuriki. He had bound the boy with his chakra receivers, completely overpowering the boy's chakra. Then he had seen the change, firsthand. The pain, the rage, but above it all, the love. The all-consuming desire for someone else. The boy's already unstable mind had collapsed yet had not broken. That love caused the boy such pain that its power transcended that of the bindings which Nagato had created. He had seen how the boy stood up, oozing with a chakra completely unlike that which he had possessed before. No longer filled with life, no longer a spreading, giving power, it now turned into a maelstrom that consumed all energy around him. The power had spiked, exploding outward, after which all the trees, all the plants, everything perished around them. It did not take a genius to realize that the boy had become a great danger now. A true challenge, even for someone as powerful as Nagato, standing between Yahiko, the body that wielded the powers of his Deva path, and Ajisai, the body that wielded the powers of his animal path. Nagato decided to take a more defensive approach. To see what the boy would be capable of now, his skin had paled. Literally turned white. It felt odd, Naruto realized, as if it was a bit scale-like, thicker than usual. Had the Zetsu tissue from Tobi somehow spread itself? Naruto couldn't tell. Nor could he really care. It had fixed his injuries, so if nothing else he was glad that it had done this. He felt detached, empty and void of all by the all-encompassing grief he felt. Ajisai had died, killed by Zetsu, and then pain had turned her into one of his abominations. Idly, some part of his mind noted that the energy of nature felt rawer, more direct, than it usually did. Almost as if nature itself understood his pain, understood his rage, and provided him with the power he needed. Or was it his rage that subconsciously caused him to filter the energy until only this remained? Again, Naruto could not find himself to care. Looking at his enemy, Naruto only felt one desire. The desire to murder pain. Any other Jinchuriki would have sprouted a cloak of chakra, with tails worth of chakra, and have gone on an uncontrollable rampage. But the Mokuton Kekkei Genkai changed everything that was supposed to be normal. With all trees withered, Naruto found another target to push his chakra into. Several facts suddenly connected in his mind. The pride pain had in his power. The lessons Kakuzu had beaten into Naruto's skull about hunting proud targets. Then there were Pain's abilities, Bansho Tenin and Shinra Tensei, and lastly, an old Buddhist idiom that Naruto had once read. A perfect way to taunt his proud target, even if the meaning completely fit his own purposes. Shinra Bansho, Naruto spoke coldly. Shinra Bansho translated literally in all-covering forests, and 10,000 things, but it was the Buddhist idiom related to the term that pointed at the meanings all of nature and all of creation. The latter fitted Pain more, with his Rinnegan. But the former, that was Naruto's area. Shinra Bansho, all-covering forests, and 10,000 things. It was a perfect fit. Because what he used did indeed cover forests completely, did indeed cover objects beyond count. It was everywhere, in some form or the other. In spores, in yeasts, in molds, in mushrooms, it was everything. Once before he had experimented, trying to manipulate these tiny life forms through his connection to nature, yet at the time he had failed. Back then the result had been relatively innocent. It had caused skin irritation and had dismantled clothes. But back then Naruto did not have access to these amounts of the Kyuubi's chakra. Kurama's chakra already had a corrosive and aggressive quality to it, but combined with the already corrosive fungi it became truly devastating. He protected himself with a dense layer of chakra that had the same qualities as the chakra that empowered the Shinra Bansho, thus neutralizing it. But the cloud which spread through the area, it moved too quickly and spread too fast for Pain to avoid it. The one which Naruto suspected to be the real Pain absorbed the chakra behind the jutsu, escaping the threat. The one which had formerly been Aegisi disappeared in a cloud of smoke, seemingly reverse summoning herself to another location. But the one with the gravitational powers, Pain's favorite path, the animated corpse of his best friend, Yahiko, there was nothing to protect it from Naruto's wrath. The cloud covered the Deva path, and its Shinra Tensei was but a delay for the inevitable. The corrosive cloud bit into Tendo's flesh, eating it away, exposing its bones to the bare eye. The real Pain shouted in anger, but was powerless to prevent his friend's body from being reduced to little more than dust. Much like everything else around Naruto was turned to dust. Shinra Bansho made no distinction. Everything other than the chakra that empowered it was merely fuel to feed the ravenous microorganisms within the cloud. While he would not say it out loud, Naruto felt some shreds of relief in the knowledge that Aegisi's corpse wasn't reduced to nothingness. If possible, he wanted to give her a proper burial, and lay beside her once his task was done. He'd create the world of peace which he had promised her, before he'd join her in the afterlife. Seeing that Shinra Bansho was not going to harm the real Pain, Naruto ended the jutsu and switched to the next. The jutsu had done its job, both in its effects and the taunting name, at aggravating Pain. Nothing went as it was supposed to go. The plan was to defeat Amigekure, to force Akatsuki out of their hidey hole. Uzumaki Naruto, the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, was their target. They'd go after him, she knew. And from what she heard through the Yamanaka which had been assigned to her squad, that fight had already commenced a little while ago. But overrunning the defensive lines of the aimed forces had not gone as smoothly as she had hoped. Then again, she already had concluded that nothing in this little war went as it was supposed to. The moment of the 5 strongest hidden villages uniting against a common threat was nothing short of unique. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She honestly hoped this would not be the end of that alliance, although she wasn't naive enough to presume that the alliance would last after the common threat had been removed. Still, there was nothing wrong with a little hope, was there? She had really hoped this alliance could improve the relations between their villages on a more permanent basis. At least, what would be left of the allies? The allied forces were in complete confusion due to all the fake shinobi that were attacking randomly. Friends turned on each other, out of nothing but the suspicion that the other might be one of those fakes. Sadly, only a small percentage of those who perished reverted to the white plant-like creatures responsible for the chaos. What was worse, however, was that if friends could be turned into enemies, there was no shortage of grudges between the 5 villages. No shortage of personal vendettas, resulting of the varying missions which the village undertook to weaken the other villages even in time of peace. Not that the current peace was truly peaceful anyway. From the shadows they still fought, even though they carefully avoided incidents that could trigger open war. It was a status quo which would be continued as long as no single village truly had the upper hand. In the current chaos, however, that status quo was all too easily forgotten. She had already executed several shinobi of her own village that had been foolish enough to fight an ally. Not that she had the overall command, but she had enough authority to issue the orders necessary to protect the alliance against the foolishness of her own village's troops. Sadly, her efforts had mostly been in vain. Iwa, Kiri, Suna, and Konoha fought against Amigakure, maintaining some sort of unified front even though their plant-like enemy, she thought Naruto had identified him as Zetsu, disrupted everything. But Kumogakure was a wholly different story. Shortly after Zetsu began his devilish work, a small contingent of Kumo shinobi, no more than a dozen men and women, struck the Iwa forces in the flank. Led by the Reikage himself, none was able to halt their advance. None but her grandfather, whose jutsu had taken out 3 Kumo shinobi in one strike. The Reikage had escaped it due to his inhuman speed, but his bodyguards had not been so lucky. At that point Inoki had ordered his granddaughter to stay out of his fight, and focus her efforts on killing the remainder of the Kumogakure traitors. While he had been seemingly easygoing and mellow, the white-haired and dark-skinned man called Darui had proven himself to be a very annoying enemy. Even when all his allies had fallen to Iwa hands, it had taken Kuratsuchi quite some effort to turn the man into the smoldering pile of lava which he was now. Too many good shinobi and kunoichi had lost their lives in this pointless skirmish. A skirmish of which the reason was a complete mystery to her. Why would they believe that Iwagakure had taken the Hachibi, when all knew that Akatsuki had stolen Kumo's Jinchuriki? It made no sense at all. Kuratsuchi had even been surprised to see that the Kumo Nin hadn't been Zetsu's clones. Returning to where she had left her grandfather, Kuratsuchi intended to see how she could aid him. While he was old, and suffered from a back problem, Ryotenda no Inoki, the Sandaime Tsuchikage, was a formidable shinobi. Far stronger than Kuratsuchi knew herself to be, but if she could sufficiently impress him, perhaps he'd let her take over his hat. Everyone knew that it wouldn't hurt to have a little change in leadership in Iwagakure, if only to break their old and inflexible as stone itself traditions. At least, the younger generation, to which Kuratsuchi belonged, thought so. Inoki's generation had quite different views, and rather stuck to their current position until their bones would finally turn to dust. The sight of the one-armed Reikage made the young woman smile viciously. The fool had chosen to attack them, rather than give the aid he promised. He deserved no less. The smirk just as quickly left her face, however, when she saw a small bundle of blooded cloth which looked far too much like G-Gramps? Kuratsuchi whispered. No, you can't. She was cut short when the sweating and heaving Reikage turned and tried to attack her. The man was fast, proving that his claim to the title of being the fastest shinobi alive was no idle boast. Kuratsuchi was not alone, however. Perhaps he wasn't as fast as the Reikage had he been in full health, but in the man's current injured and worn condition Akatsuchi was more than able to get a grip on the man's arm. The Reikage was no tiny man, but the large and imposing Akatsuchi towered over him. His dark eyes burned with a fury which Kuratsuchi had never seen before in the usually so jovial and cheerful man. Yet, she knew how fiercely loyal the man was to her grandfather to the point where he had earned the title of being the Tsuchikage shield, even though he was barely older than she was. The Reikage may have had the elemental advantage, with earth being weak to lightning, but Akatsuchi was too enraged to care about something as petty as the burns on his massive stone-clad hands. If the Reikage was known as the fastest shinobi alive, Kuratsuchi suspected that her friend Akatsuchi could very well claim the title of being the physically strongest shinobi alive. His hold on the Reikage was unwavering. His fist descending on the man who murdered her grandfather was like a mountain falling from the skies. With one thunderous blow, the citizen of stone brought the ruler of the clouds to his knees. Kuratsuchi, now! He barked out. Rabbit, ox, dog, snake. Never in her 18 years of life had she gone through these hand seals as swiftly as she did now. The realization that her grandfather had died spurred her to new heights. Superheated and condensed, she spat out quicklime at her target. Yotan, Sekijio no Jutsu, lava release, quicklime congealing technique, she hissed. It encased the Reikage, scorching his skin, but burning the man had not been her primary objective. While she avoided hitting her teammate with the quicklime, the Reikage was mostly covered with the quickly hardening material. This was all part of the plan. No hand seals were needed, no words were wasted. She simply lunged at the bulking man and engulfed him in flames, forcing Akatsuchi to let go of the man at the last possible moment. Fast as he was, I still got out alive. Had Kuratsuchi taken the time to use a water jutsu to completely cool down the lime, he would have been dead. Not that he was in a much better state right now. His dark skin showed blisters, burns covered most of his body. The proud leader of Kumogakure fell to his knee, gasping, spitting out blood. Old Inoki had been an extremely experienced opponent, the worst enemy for the rash Raikage, even though the old Tsuchikage still had his moments of disorientation ever since he had been targeted by Danzo's Sharingan. The latter had proven to be a costly distraction. Speed had determined the outcome of the battle, but still it had cost the Raikage. His arm had been caught in one of the disintegrating attacks. Now, the old man's granddaughter continued Inoki's work. Before he could recover, I realized that Kuratsuchi stood in front of him. Desperate to avenge the brother he mistakenly believed to have been slain by Iwa's forces, could do little to avoid the inevitable. He lacked the stamina and the chakra to activate his lightning shroud one final time. His injuries, both external and internal, were too grave. The last thing which the Yandame Raikage of Kumogakure saw was the kunai descending to his skull. Ironic, how vengeance ended his quest for vengeance. Shinra Bano. It was a taunt that didn't escape Nagato's notice. Vexing as it was, it paled in comparison to what the jutsu did. Yahiko, the friend that had died due to the treasonous actions of Hanzo and Danzo, the friend he had lost all those years ago, it felt as if he just now lost him again. 5 out of 6 paths had been lost. One of them had been sealed and buried, one of them was lost and not even Nagato knew what happened to it, and the others, destroyed and out of his reach. Possessing the powers of the Naraka path changed nothing about his current situation. Shinra Tensei, Nagato growled. The boy was far more trouble than he ever expected him to be. It wasn't like the boy was a properly trained Jinchuriki, like the Jinchuriki of the Rokubi. And that Jinchuriki had fallen without even permanently destroying a single path. Had he been overconfident? Nagato didn't think he had, and even if he had not, who would have been there to help him against such an enemy? Konan held a crippling disadvantage, with Naruto seemingly able to completely counter her paper, dead wood, the boy had called it. Zetsu was too weak. Kisame? Samahata gave the swordsman a fearsome advantage against any truly strong opponent, but Nagato didn't delude himself into thinking that was enough. As the boy was right now, Kisame would have been slaughtered within minutes. That left only his old sensei. But Jiraiya had been needed in order to stop the Hokage from interfering. For the first time since years, Nagato considered the necessity of backup. But there wasn't anyone able, or trustworthy, available. Nagato tried to estimate how durable these new legs were. Well, not that they were completely new, but the Zetsu-like material which encased his normally crippled legs enabled him to walk. He wasn't as fast and nimble as he wished he was, but with the abilities that he had at his disposal, Nagato didn't truly need to dodge any jutsu. He could simply absorb or repel anything. And yet, the trees which the boy grew weren't green, weren't full of life as they had been before. They were gray and dead, filled with thorns that were dripping with some kind of venom, the sorts of which Nagato rather would not find out what they did. His body was, in spite of everything, still rather frail. In hindsight, it had been a terrible decision to humiliate the boy by showing him his late girlfriend's corpse. It had nearly broken his resolve at first, but something about what Chikashoto had said had caused the Jinchuriki to lose himself in this rage. A last stand which was as vexing as it was impressive. Never had Nagato imagined anyone to possess these quantities of chakra. It was simply unfathomable that a human body could tolerate the strain of such a burden. He scowled when Naruto launched a particularly massive attack, while Nagato found himself completely surrounded by the thorn-wearing dead trees. The timing had been flawless, too soon after the previous usage for Nagato to resort to Shinra Tensei. Likewise, the amount of wood was simply too vast to counter with the abilities of the Preta Path. Not all of the mass could be absorbed fast enough. Still, whatever the boy threw at him, Nagato couldn't think of it as anything less than utterly pointless. In a cloud of smoke, his enemy escaped from the trap which Naruto had constructed. These woods, which he called the Shinrin, lifeless forest, were dangerous. Even if someone like Pain must have seen the danger of the thorns, it would prove difficult to avoid them. But it was unexpected that he could just remove himself from that spot. Now that Naruto thought about it, Ajaci's body had shown a similar ability when it escaped the Shinra Bano clouds. He scowled angrily. How could he forget that the real Pain possessed all these abilities? That should have been obvious at this point. Then again, he was too angry to really think things through. So he just tore through the dead forest that he had just spawned, rushing to the place where he felt Pain's chakra signature, only to find the hunched man throw some kind of black ball of chakra into the sky. Chibaku Tensei, Pain panted, hands clasped together, and visibly exerting himself. The tiny black orb of chakra floated high, but suddenly exerted a tremendous amount of chakra. A pull that tore open the earth underneath Naruto's feet, and pretty much everywhere else as well. Huge chunks of rock and the muddy soil of aim flew towards the tiny orb. Inoichi stared up in the sky, much like the rest of the shinobi gathered on and around the battlefield. He was in the same state of disbelief as the appalled civilians back at camp that lay just outside the war zone. Ninjutsu could take many shapes, depending on the skill and power of the user. While he wasn't exactly lacking in terms of experience, and had seen his fair share of insane ninjutsu, Inoichi had never dreamt this could happen. Something like this shouldn't be possible. The Yamanaka, just like the flabbergasted shinobi around him, stared up to the mass of stone which was shaping. A new moon was created. Is this the power of Akatsuki? Inoichi felt worried. Not for himself, but for his daughter. She was in that area, and currently not responding to his attempts to contact her. He could sense Naruto's overwhelming power, although it had become dark and vile undoubtedly because the boy was tapping into the chakra of the Kyuubi. Still, what could even he do against a man capable of creating a new moon? There were times when things went according to plan, and there were times like these, when everything went to shit. He knew better than anyone that this fight would be a difficult one. The raw advantage in terms of chakra capacity held little meaning against an opponent who could wield the Rinnegan to such a degree. Still, that was not why his situation had changed into a disaster. No, the boy had seen what the fool who called himself Pain had done to the boy's mate. And as if that hadn't been enough, the animated corpse of the girl had spoken words all too similar to those which she had spoken in life. The memory had warped the boy's mind into state which even the most wrathful of the Biju would pause at. Rinnegan was bad, but Mokuton was perhaps even worse to them, and that resulted in the current mess. Kurama, the nine-tailed Biju, the one who boasted to be the greatest and most powerful of his brethren, had been reduced to nothing but a slave. And the worst of it all was that the boy didn't even consciously cause this. In his rage, the brat had simply drained his surroundings from energy, and had subconsciously also targeted Kurama. Imprisoned, surrounded by trees, the monstrous fox had no way to escape. More humiliating, his attempts at resisting the chakra drain had resulting in absolutely nothing, and still he couldn't get himself to hate the brat for it. Had the brat not been hurt in such a despicable way, he would have continued to cooperate with Kurama. There wasn't much deceit in the boy, in spite of all his distrust. Kurama, after all, had first row seats to everything which happened within the boy's mind. The way the boy was lost in his own pain and anger, to a point beyond all reason. Understanding what drove the boy, however, didn't make the current situation any better. The fox, entangled in so many tree roots that his orange fur was barely visible at this point, could only watch in horror as the boy was trapped in the miniature moon which the Rinnegan wielder created with his Chibaku Tensei. Damn. I guess this is the point when those humans say that there is nothing left to lose, Kurama spat bitterly. Spitting out blood, while feeling the same liquid running from his nostrils as well, Nagato knew that this jutsu was pushing his body past its limits. The inert Shikishoto had slumped down, as Nagato stopped emitting chakra to it, needing every bit of it to make the Chibaku Tensei as powerful as he could. This jutsu was his trump card, but in any other situation he would have avoided using it. It put too much of a strain on him. The damage to his body would definitely mean that the day of his death was pulled forward significantly. Suppose that he wouldn't die at the boy's hands or in the process of using the Geto Mazo to complete his plans for world peace. This thin and sickly-looking body would reach the end of its lifespan sooner rather than later. However, the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko was not the sort of opponent against whom he could afford to hold back this jutsu. Nagato could see that the boy's reserves were slinking with each jutsu, yet at the current rate the boy would still outlast him. This forced Nagato's hand. Nagato knew that his victory was inevitable. He knew it from the very moment this battle started, but the cost of the victory was unexpectedly high. Losing so many of the paths, being forced to use Chibaku Tensei, nothing really went as he had planned it. Just like I never planned for you to betray me, Nagato added tersely, using the ability of Azura Path to grow an extra set of arms. Arms which caught the Sannin before he could plunge the spiraling orb of chakra in Nagato's back. Do you hate me, Jiraiya-sensei? Nagato, why do you people keep struggling against the inevitable? Because we'd rather die than see the people we care about suffer, Nagato, Jiraiya grunted, trying to free himself from the iron grips of the mechanical arms. Care, love creates bonds, which in turn cause suffering when they are broken. Nagato nodded toward the mass of earth and stone in which he had sealed the Jinchuriki. He loved that girl to the point that he lost his mind when he learned about her fate. The power of his rage was impressive, But ultimately his rage only led to his own downfall. Blinded by his love, he walked straight into the range of the Chibaku Tensei. Have you truly forgotten why you took control of Akatsuki after Yahiko perished? Jiraiya asked with a tone of bitter disappointment. I should have seen this sooner. I should have tried to help you. Help? Nagato gave a humorless chuckle. Where was help when Konoha Shinobi butchered my family, sensei? Where was help when Danzo and Hanzo betrayed us, and Yahiko died? No, sensei, we do not get help in this world. Power is necessary to defend oneself in this world. At the same time, power is what drives this accursed system, what continues all the conflicts and wars. That is why I continued Akatsuki, and in the process you began to oppose everything Yahiko stood for. Jiraiya choked when Nagato's hand squeezed his throat shut. It seems like you failed to understand the lesson which pain teaches. Do try to lecture me on that, Jiraiya snarled. In hindsight he wished he had let Tsunade heal him first, rather than stubbornly rushing off on his own. Rasen, hush. With a flick of his wrist Nagato slapped the half-baked Rinnegan away. With Chibaku Tensei having come to its completion, with the Jinchuriki sealed inside, there was no reason why he couldn't use his real arms anymore. Now, let's see what your pitiful life has taught you. Nagato's hand rested atop Jiraiya's head. Naruto's performance with Senjutsu had made Nagato curious to learn more about it, and who better to extract such knowledge from than a Sennin like Jiraiya? He felt tired. The world had gone dark. Stones and earth were pressing against him with a force that made his current position rather uncomfortable. Worse, he could barely move to make himself a bit more comfortable. Was this it? Was this all he amounted to? Was everything that happened going to end in such a shitty way? He looked back at the split life he had led. A relatively happy and innocent childhood, growing up amidst the Yamanaka clan, nearly inseparable from Ino. The worst aspect about those years was the fact that he was a Jinchuriki. The cold looks, the if they got the chance shop owners who forced him either to pay absurd prices or threw him out, the kids who thought they could pick on him because the adults said he was an abomination. Those bad aspects paled in comparison to the warmth and love from the Yamanaka. At that time he had needed no one's acknowledgement aside from Ino's. All that had come crashing down when his team had been slaughtered. All because they were after him, the Jinchuriki, the child with such vast amounts of yang chakra that Zetsu wished to use him for his accursed schemes. That's when the regrets had started to pile up. The bounties which he had collected, like the unfortunate Yamanaka Kaiomi, were fresh in his mind. Though there were things that hurt deeper. Obviously, the first person who came to mind was Ajisai. Naruto blamed himself. Blamed himself for loving her, and the danger it had put her in. Blamed himself for not having taken her along, and somehow find a way to smuggle her out of aim. She shouldn't have died. He should have been there to protect her. Perhaps that was the price he needed to pay for the sins he committed. He hadn't been able to convince Gyurin to abandon her foolish loyalties, nor had he truly pressed her to do so. Her fate, becoming Orochimaru's host, had practically been his fault. Though, he couldn't feel nearly as much guilt about that as he did about Fu's death. The poor Jinchuriki had suffered a life worse than his, and he had killed her. He had killed her because he followed Akatsuki, both out of free will and by force. Her death was even more painful to him because he had abandoned Akatsuki so shortly after the Nanabi had been extracted from her. Her death weighed heavily on his conscience. Naruto knew that, at some level, everything that had happened had been influenced by others. But not Fu. Capturing Fu, leading her to her death, it had been his decision. Regrets. Ajisai, Fu, Gyurin, and even his old team came to mind. People who died because of him. Though not all suffering ended in death. He had forgotten his old life, and who knew how badly he had hurt Ino because of it. Forgetting the girl he had spent most of his life with, whom he had just called his girlfriend before that fated day of his disappearance, it was one of the things he hated Zetsu most for. Ino had not deserved to suffer such pain and loss. And now that he remembered he had already become cursed, tainted by his wrongdoings, he had lost Ajisai. How was he supposed to know what to think about Ino? How was he supposed to just pretend like he was his old self? He couldn't. He didn't want to either. Ino was better than that. She deserved someone in her life who wasn't as horrible as he was. She deserved to be loved by someone free of sin. After all, had it not been for the promise he had made to Kushina, he knew he would have killed Ino at the moment he had first seen her, wrongfully blaming her for Ajisai's death. That was another one of his regrets, and a desire which bubbled up in his mind to apologize to her, even though he knew that it was futile to think such things now that he knew he was so close to his death. Still, he wished he could have talked to his mother a bit more. Huh. I sound like I've completely given up already, Naruto idly thought to himself. This lethargic feeling which he couldn't shake off made him indifferent about the whole situation. He knew he was trapped. He knew that if Pain had his way, Kurama would be sealed into that damnable statue, throwing the world into an unprecedented state of chaos and death. That stood completely at odds with the promises which he had made to Ajisai, but also with those he made to his mother. Never give up, Naruto. Never lose hope. You are stronger than that, don't give in to this despair. That was what Kushina had told him. And yet he had given up. And why not? Death wasn't something Naruto feared. In fact, it was rather something he longed for. He'd see Kushina again, after he would die. Would he meet his father as well? Naruto hoped so. He really did. Although there were some complications in that matter, though nothing on which he could act at this very moment. Still, he'd have a chance he'd meet his parents again. And once he was in the afterlife, he would see Ajisai again as well. Or is she stranded here, in the world of the living, because of what Pain did to her? The macabre thought struck in his mind like a bolt of lightning. It banished all thoughts of dying and living a peaceful existence in the hereafter. How could he think of rest, when Ajisai might still be suffering? Could he lull himself into this false tranquility, when her body was still used as one of the paths of pain? Beyond that, he had made promises. And he would never go back on his word. Despair, loss, sorrow, those things were irrelevant. Even if it was merely a possibility, a wild theory, he could not enter the afterlife with the idea of his precious people not being safe. How could he give in to those foolish emotions? Something within him broke. He didn't even realize that it had been an extremely complex and subtle illusion, as Pain had exploited Naruto's berserker state of mind. Naruto had not just stepped into a trap by walking into the range of the Chibaku Tensei. No, with Shikishoto still at his disposal, Pain had wanted to be completely sure that his jutsu would capture Naruto. There had been no excuses, no room left to underestimate the Jinchuriki. Pressed toward the artificial center of gravity, entombed within vast amounts of rock and earth, trapping Naruto within a genjutsu was overkill, or so Pain thought. So that is the truth behind the boy. Who would have known, Nagato mumbled, more to himself than to the old man whom he held in his hand. Being the Yandame's son definitely explains why he turned out to be such an annoyance. And why you reacted so irrationally when you heard rumors about his survival, sensei. Jiraiya wasn't able to do much more than glare back defiantly. With the grip on the man's soul, however, Nagato knew very well what his old teacher felt. Very well, it's not as if I gave you no chance to join us. Goodbye, sensei. Nagato had already drained most of Jiraiya's chakra, so the only thing which now helped the man, his indomitable will. Although Nagato realized that he wouldn't have had as much trouble dragging on the man's soul if he hadn't been so exhausted. A loud cracking sound was the first thing that made Nagato pause. Then the rocks started to fall. Debris fell from the heavens, wrecking the already torn up soil even further. That which had been pulled up by Nagato's jutsu now fell. Struck with a sense of dread, Nagato's Rinnegan slowly followed the falling soil, all the way up to the source. His ripple-patterned eyes widened when he saw a massive wooden arm stick out of the artificial mini-moon which he had made with Chibaku Tensei. Then the chakra exploded, just as the mini-moon exploded. The wooden Buddha-like gargantuan showed itself, its right hand crushing the core of the Chibaku Tensei. As the jutsu struggled to continue its existence, so did it strain Nagato. Spitting out blood, his vision blurring from the exhaustion, Nagato was forced to end the jutsu. All the rock and soil which still hovered high in the sky now fell, as a gruesome homage to the jutsu's name, planetary devastation. Amidst the onslaught, Naruto fell, his Juchumen Kanon fell. Nagato sighed in relief when he saw that the hastily created construct did not survive the impact of crashing into the earth. The sound of the wood tearing apart was sweet music to Nagato's ears. There is still a chance. Now, if only the boy stays down. The words which Nagato mumbled to himself were cut short when the ground underneath him burst open. Dropping Jiraiya, Nagato jumped back to dodge the wooden tentacles. A dome of wood pushed itself to the surface, splitting in two halves and revealing a blooded and fatigued Uzumaki. Naruto's flak jacket was practically torn to shreds. He absent-mindedly tore the last parts of it from his torso as he shakily walked towards Jiraiya. The Jinchuriki was essentially bare-chested, as his long-sleeved shirt was barely in any better condition than the former flak jacket. The parts of his upper body which consisted of Zetsu tissue had repaired themselves quickly enough, but the parts which were truly Naruto were covered with bruises and cuts. Good, he's still alive, Naruto panted, glancing at his utterly exhausted godfather. Struggling against someone who tries to tear your soul out was something which classified as extremely taxing. A weary and weak grin was all the response Naruto got from the man, before he passed out. Reaching out with his senses, Naruto realized that the man was still alive but likely suffering from severe chakra exhaustion. I guess he'll need a medic soon. He turned to look at Nagato. That means that I have to cut our time short. Pain. Big words, Nagato said more calmly than he felt. In spite of the tattered condition of his opponent, Nagato knew that his situation was little better. Perhaps even worse, considering how his body hadn't exactly been in prime condition anyway. While his ability to walk had returned thanks to Zetsu, Nagato was still skin and bones. That single usage of Chibaku Tensei had already strained him to the point of multiple internal injuries. Meanwhile, Naruto's power was growing again. How did he escape? It was rumored that the Sage of the Six Paths himself used this jutsu to trap the Geto Mazo. How can it be that this boy, who shouldn't even be a properly trained Jinchuriki to begin with, was able to break free? Even if his Mokuton Kekkei Genkai enables him to beat the Kyuubi into submission, it would not be aiding the boy voluntarily when he got trapped, would it? Nagato frowned. Of course it would. The alternative would be that the Kyuubi got extracted from its Jinchuriki and sealed within the Geto Mazo. Of course it would deem that fate worse than its current condition. All of a sudden Kisame and Konan appeared in a cloud of smoke. Nagato, we need to hurry, Konan urged. He's stalling, buying time to refill his chakra reserves. Yeah, the kid definitely became stronger than we expected him to be. Then we should. Nagato started, but once again Naruto cut him off. This time not by an exploding artificial moon, but simply with laughter. You've got to be shitting me, Naruto chuckled. The mighty pain can't tell the difference between the real ones and the fakes? Konan and Kisame scowled at his words. Clearly they had hoped that Naruto wouldn't spoil the surprise like this. Nagato took a closer watch, and noticed the small differences in their chakra patterns. Zetsu, what is the meaning of this? Well, it came to my attention that you're losing your battle, Nagato, the Konan. Zetsu shrugged, with a very uncharacteristic smirk dawning Konan's face. Yeah, it's truly a big letdown, you know. The Kisame Zetsu had the same malicious grin, but in this case it looked rather natural. We really thought you could take him down, Nagato. Quit fooling around, and help me against the Jinchuriki. Nagato narrowed his eyes, glaring at the far too relaxed Zetsu. He wasn't sure what they were planning, but their words were obvious lies. Why? Had Zetsu expected him to lose? What part of which plan was that? Nagato was guarded, yes, but at the same time he was looking at the wrong place. The attack didn't come from behind. He had not been Zetsu's target. No, a strange gurgle alerted Nagato. Poor Naruto-kun, so tired, and so fragile without his senjutsu, the Konan Zetsu sniggered. Had we been any later, Naruto-kun would have been too weak to use properly. The Kisame Zetsu looked at Nagato. His plans truly are a work of genius. Nagato saw Uzumaki Naruto fall to his knees, his face contorted as if he was suffering an excruciating pain. From the ground underneath the boy's feet a black substance was creeping up his legs. The Jinchuriki struggled, but it didn't take long. The black substance spread quickly, all over the right side of Naruto's body. The boy screamed when the substance reached his face, but after that he fell silent, until an all too familiar laugh broke the silence. I knew the boy was strong, but he keeps exceeding my expectations. Zetsu, bring me more of your copies. I need chakra. Just bring them close enough so that I can drain them with one of Naruto-kun's Mokuton jutsu. Aye, the Kisame Zetsu saluted. Why Zetsu kept up the charade was something beyond Nagato's understanding, but the wider half had always been rather silly. Apprehensively, Nagato watched as Black Zetsu flexed his new host's muscles. They had all been playing like puppets on Zetsu's strings. What was his true plan? Nagato couldn't tell. Worse, he was inclined to believe that he would not be a part of those plans. And he was currently rather defenseless. Exhausted, 5 of his 6 paths of pain destroyed, Nagato knew he'd have to act very carefully now. Especially now that Black Zetsu seemed to rapidly replenish its chakra reserves. Perfect, a grin spread over Black Zetsu's half of the face, as well as on that of Naruto himself. As if Zetsu wanted to demonstrate how complete his control over the boy's body was. No, not perfect, not yet. You do seem to be missing something. Konan Zetsu nodded pensively, obviously mocking Nagato. But what? Yes, it seems that your usefulness has come to an end, Nagato-kun, Black Zetsu said darkly. It is time for you to return those lovely eyes I so gracefully lent you. Chapter 20, Resurgence. Thus the sum of things is ever being renewed, and mortals live dependent one upon another. Some nations increase, others diminish, and in a short space the generations of living creatures are changed and like runners pass on the torch of life. Titus Lucretius Carus. The eyes you lent me? For a moment Nagato didn't know what to think, what to say, and least of all what to do. Had Zetsu truly used him to such an extent? Had he merely been a puppet, his entire life? Every fact he had taken for granted in his life suddenly seemed to be contested, challenged by this single statement from Zetsu. Well, the Kisame Zetsu rolled his eyes. You really think that you were just randomly born with a dojutsu as rare and powerful as the Rinnegan? We needed someone to carry those eyes, Konan Zetsu agreed. And there was a shortage of Uzumaki, so we were left with little choice. Things would have gone smoother had that toad sage not approached you, Black Zetsu groused. After White Zetsu posed as Konoha Nin and murdered your parents, I thought it would have been best to leave you wallow in despair for a little while. Obviously that had been a mistake. Still, you had enough rage in your heart to make you easily manipulable. You killed my parents? Yep, and wait until he explains the part of intercepting the messengers that went between Hanzo and Danzo, Konan Zetsu chirped, planting another proverbial dagger in Nagato's heart. No time. Let's just pluck out his eyes and get it over with, Black Zetsu said, steering Naruto's arms into forming a familiar hand seal. As if I would allow you to do that, Nagato growled, preparing his attack. My parents, Yahiko, you've been the cause of it all. Kisame Zetsu wagged his finger chidingly. You still don't understand your situation, do you? All of a sudden Nagato's legs gave out, leaving him sprawled over the ground. He could feel his chakra reserves evaporate, what little chakra he had stolen from Jiraiya now being stolen from him. Why did you think I offered you those legs? Black Zetsu chuckled. The Zetsu tissue which had encased Nagato's crippled legs turned into a butter-like substance, slithering over the ground until it reached the feet of Naruto and Black Zetsu, taking nearly all of Nagato's chakra along with it. The leech and the Jinchuriki walked over to Nagato, kneeling next to the fallen leader of Akatsuki. Although Nagato only now realized that he had never truly been the leader of Akatsuki at all. Only a puppet, manipulated with invisible strings. I guess this is the moment when I say, game over. Did you hear that joke about the injured vegetable? Some say he got beat, Kisame Zetsu added. You really have a horrible sense of humor, Black Zetsu sighed tiredly. And an even worse sense of timing. Well, at least. A thunderous explosion tore both Kisame Zetsu and Konan Zetsu apart. Before Black Zetsu fully realized what was going on, due to the dust and smoke that had blinded him, Nagato was already out of his reach. I had hoped you had died, Konan-chan. You didn't honestly think that I'd kill myself like that, did you? Konan snarled. Now Dai, how about no? Zetsu made Naruto shrug, while smirking nonchalantly. Your little origami tricks don't work against Naruto-kun, remember? Though, I admit you've managed to surprise me just now. I definitely need more time to get used to this body, though I suppose that I should count myself happy that I've managed to take control over it. Only just, Nagato panted, crawling out of the cocoon of paper in which Konan had wrapped him. Our battle weakened him, but his power is vast, Zetsu. You were already struggling to take control over him. He'll soon grow too strong for you. What makes you think I will give him that much time? Zetsu admonished. Now, if you please. Once again Zetsu was interrupted. He and Naruto found himself lying in a small crater, with an extremely agitated Senju standing in front of him. A Senju whose expression immediately shifted to horror, when she saw whom she had just hit. And Naruto? Wrong, Black Zetsu sneered, with more meanings than just the obvious. Yes, she was standing before Naruto, technically, but her question was essentially wrong because Naruto wasn't the one who was in control right now. Beyond that, the whole situation was wrong from Zetsu's point of view, as the Hokage wasn't supposed to be alive. One of the white Zetsu had reported that she had been severely injured in her battle against Jiraiya, and that her chakra reserves were mostly spent. Now that Zetsu looked closer, he noticed that the woman had lost the diamond-shaped seal on her forehead. There were still some fading lines covering her face and her body, but it was obvious that she was running on fumes. Still, she remained a dangerous opponent. What was worse was that her presence changed this battlefield. Nagato was extremely vulnerable right now, and Zetsu knew he needed to extract the Rinnegan before the man would regain some of his vigor. His body might have been mostly exhausted, literally to the bone, but Nagato was still an Uzumaki, and if Zetsu had learned one thing over the centuries, it would be to never underestimate the life force of an Uzumaki. Konan's presence was relatively unimportant. While the woman was undoubtedly dangerous, certainly capable enough on her own right to earn her spot within Akatsuki, she had a rather crucial vulnerability against Naruto. Still, in order to properly counter her paper-based jutsu, Zetsu would need the time to focus. And unfortunately for him, his control over Naruto and Naruto's abilities wasn't as strong as he would have liked. Had it been Naruto himself, Konan wouldn't have stood much of a chance. But as he was right now, no, she'd be pesky if Zetsu couldn't focus on her. At the same time, he couldn't afford to ignore Tsunade. The destructive power behind her fists was something that could be dangerous, especially with the injured and weakened condition which Naruto's body was in at the moment. I could deal with both at the same time, Black Zetsu pondered. And I know I'd win. However, it would require more time than I can afford to waste. The risk of Nagato regaining some of his chakra in that amount of time is too great. Moreover, there are only a handful of White Zetsu's clones remaining. They will not be able to leech enough chakra for me to fight all three of them without risking defeat. Black Zetsu sighed, making Naruto sigh along, and grimaced as he stared at Nagato. How vexing. It seems you lived to see another worthless day, Nagato. This was no time for overconfidence, no time for pointless gambles. Not when he was so close to reviving his mother. With or without the Rinnegan, he knew he'd succeed. Not having access to Uchiha Madara became even more annoying now that he had failed to take the Rinnegan back. It removed both the option of the Edo Tensei, impure world reincarnation, as well as that of the Rinne Tensei no Jutsu, Samsara of heavenly life technique. Still, there were always plenty of backup plans. There was always that storage facility where he was keeping a supply of Sharingan, which Zetsu had stolen at the night the entire Uchiha clan had been massacred. It wouldn't be as efficient as reviving Madara, as the regular Mangekyo Sharingan would be less effective, but it would still do the job. So Zetsu suppressed his rage, and chose the wisest option. One way or the other, victory would be his. This small impediment, no matter how annoying, meant little. This change of plans would require a larger supply of power for Naruto's Mokuton, though. That would mean we have to relocate. I would rather have stayed away from that annoying place. The moment Konan made the area explode, a courtesy of the numerous tags which she had spread, she already knew it was too late. Black Zetsu had somehow overtaken Naruto, and the two had disappeared into the earth. Glaring at the Hokage, Konan wondered what she was supposed to do. Zetsu had betrayed them. He had stolen all the Jinchuriki, and then attempted to steal Nagato's Rinnegan. She couldn't say what had been going on, but since she didn't really know what to do, she hadn't attacked the Senju. On the contrary, she had erected a paper wall in front of the Hokage to protect her from the explosion, just as she had done for herself and Nagato. An enemy of my enemy is my friend. But what to do when that enemy abandons the battlefield? Nagato, it is over, Konan. We failed. I failed. Never before had she heard Nagato talk with such a defeated tone of voice. Even when Yahiko had died, he had remained strong due to his anger. But now he was a broken man. Staring at the two, Tsunade wondered why the blue-haired woman, even though she wore the cloak that designated her as a member of Akatsuki. Why had the woman attacked the one whom Tsunade had recognized as Zetsu, the being that had been the focus of Naruto's ire, and why had the woman shielded her from that same attack? An attack of that magnitude could have caused significant harm to Tsunade in her current condition, even more so due to her being distracted by the sight of the Zetsu-possessed Naruto. Tsunade-sama! Ino leaped to her side. The Yamanaka had been too slow to keep up with her teacher, and hadn't seen exactly what had occurred. Seeing Jiraiya's unconscious form, two members of Akatsuki, the crater of the most recent attack, and Tsunade standing next to said crater. Stand down, Ino, Tsunade ordered, ignoring the utterly confused expression from her fellow blonde. You too, she glared at Konan and Nagato. What is going on? What did Zetsu do to Naruto? Naruto-kun? Ino blurted out, immediately shutting up when Tsunade's glare shifted to her. Ino knew very well that there was no room for distractions at this point. The woman in front of them wore the Akatsuki cloak, and the other, judging by Naruto's descriptions, that man was Pain, although he had red hair, rather than the orange color Naruto had spoken of. We were betrayed, Nagato admitted slowly, his voice straining. Zetsu, he betrayed us. He used us. Used me. Right from the very start. Nagato? Konan blinked, surprised by the bitter way he had said the last part. My parents. For decades I believed that it had been shinobi from Konoha who killed them, but it turns out that it was Zetsu all along. Our best friend, Yahiko, died because Hanzo the salamander and Konoha's Danzo decided to join forces and lure us into a trap. That was why we changed the goals of Akatsuki. Nagato looked at the Hokage. But that was a lie as well. As despicable as their actions were, Hanzo and Danzo were tricked into what they did just as we were. Zetsu was also the one who killed Naruto's girlfriend, Ino muttered shyly, feeling rather out of place between shinobi of this stature. Still, she began to see some of the dots that could be connected. Naruto had spoken of Zetsu, and now Ino began to see how Zetsu had been the one who had orchestrated many events even though she didn't know why. Tsunade, however, had very different thoughts. That barely excuses you for what you have done, pain, shifting a bit, so that she stood between Nagato and the angered Hokage. Konan seemed ready to defend her friend. She was startled, however, when Nagato halted her. No, Konan. The Hokage is right. You were right, he looked her in the eye. I should have listened to your warnings, Konan. I should have distrusted Zetsu more, but in my arrogance I thought he was too weak to be of any importance. You were blinded by your pain, Konan mumbled. Forgive me, Nagato. I only realized when it was too late, when you wouldn't listen anymore. I even betrayed Akatsuki. I attacked Zetsu, and destroyed the corpse of Uchiha Madara which Orochimaru had prepared. I couldn't find the remains of the other Jinchuriki, though, so I presumed that Zetsu managed to take them away. Good, Nagato smiled weakly. I do not know what he wished to do with Madara, but Zetsu intended for you to revive Madara. Madara, as in the Uchiha Madara? Tsunade mumbled after a short moment of silence. The Senju lost what little color she had remaining after the long-winded battle. Yes, Konan nodded. Although that is of little importance now that Zetsu no longer has access to that body, and to Nagato himself. We should instead focus on stopping Zetsu. Konan, Nagato raised his hand. She won't trust you. We have done too much, wronged too many to be viewed as trustworthy. You shouldn't have lost hope, Nagato, Konan sighed. Ino looked at her Hokage, questioningly, but Tsunade just shook her head curtly and remained silent. She didn't know what was going on between the two, but she could be damned if she said it didn't intrigue her. Hope is what got us here. No, Konan seemed to gather some resolve. Hope wasn't why you abused Sensei's trust, why you used your jutsu to control his actions. Nor is hope the reason why you did what you did to Ajisai. It was despair and hatred that drove you. Your pain. Ah, the girl, Nagato looked away from his only friend. She's why you changed, because you could relate to her. Yes, Konan scowled slightly. Even after all these years she still felt that pain in her chest whenever she thought about Yahiko, the man whom she had loved, the man she still loved. I saw my old self in her, just like I saw Yahiko in Naruto. Yahiko, yes, Nagato slowly began to realize why Konan made the comparison. Not just in terms of looks, but it was the entire atmosphere surrounding the boy. Even if Naruto had tried to hide it underneath the facade of a ruthless mercenary, Nagato had seen the hope and idealism behind the boy, before Ajisai had died. After that happened, the boy's spirit had seemed to have broken. Much like Konan broke after Yahiko died. What have I done? Naruto once told me that pain in itself teaches us nothing, Konan continued, ignoring Nagato's guilt as she couldn't see his expression. It is love that binds us to people, and only because of that love we can feel pain when we lose those people. Hearing those words, both Tsunade and Ino cringed, both for their own reasons. Tsunade had experienced enough loss in her life, too much even, to know the truth behind those words, while Ino still had no idea how she was supposed to feel. Naruto had died, and then turned out to be alive after all, though he had changed so much that she could barely say that her Naruto had returned. Her emotions had gone haywire, torn between the love for the boy she had grown up with, and the confusion revolving the young man which that boy had become. She couldn't say she still understood him, and that scared her. Hurt her. Going through an emotional roller coaster of his own, Nagato remained silent. Konan was right. It were the bonds of love that had defined his life. The love for his parents, the love for his friends, they had turned into pain after losing them. He had closed himself, shutting out even his closest and only remaining friend, Konan. Obsessed with dreams of vengeance, dreams that in his mind had been the justice he wanted to bring to the world, he had forgotten what had started it all. Was it Zetsu who played him? Yes. Did that in any way change the bonds he had, the affection for those who had perished and those who remained? No. But he had lost his way. The boy who had once sworn to his sensei that he'd do everything in his power to protect his friends had become so blinded that his only remaining friend had turned against him. Tsunade of the Senju clan, Godame Hokage of Konohagakure, his voice, soft and gravely, reached the ears of those present. lying on his side, the chakra receivers that pierced his back inhibiting him from lying down in another way. He looked nothing like the fearsome leader of Akatsuki he had been, his body exhausted and crippled, his will broken. Even in the eyes of Conan he seemed only a shadow of his former self. Still, his voice held more determination than she had expected. Pain, Tsunade grunted, confirming that she heard him. My mistakes. If I can request one thing of you, it would be not to make Conan suffer for what I have done. He raised a hand, silencing Conan when she tried to interrupt him. Jiraiya-sensei suffers from chakra exhaustion, but he'll survive even without medical attention. He, in his heart, never betrayed you or Konoha, even though he lost hope. He acted as a spy for me, as I distrusted Zetsu, but otherwise he was not involved in the crimes committed by Akatsuki. Not voluntarily, at least. When he heard that Naruto had returned to Konoha, he wished to leave us, but I used my jutsu against him. Ino destroyed that chakra receiver, Tsunade nodded. After that he's not the Jiraiya I once knew, but that is my own fault. Only someone you deeply care for can hurt you so much. Isn't that what you just implied, Conan? Nagato smiled weakly. I've dragged them down with me. Don't blame them for my mistakes, Nagato. No, Conan. It is too late for me now, Nagato chided her calmly. Although he struggled to keep himself calm as he spoke further. My body is too weak, too fragile. In spite of his retreat, Zetsu still covets my Rinnegan. He will return, and we cannot allow him to get my eyes. They must be passed on, just as our hopes and dreams must one day be passed on. I hope you can free Naruto. And stop Zetsu, his control, it is fragile. Had Naruto been a little stronger, had I not pushed him to the point of exhaustion. I'm sorry, Conan. For everything. Nagato, you don't need to, with some rest you will. The ram and snake hand seals which he formed silenced her weak protests. Geto, Rinne Tensei no Jutsu, Outer Path, Samsara of Heavenly Life Technique. Nagato remained calm and collected, even when the last bits of chakra were drained from his body. His skin turned in a sickly gray, and his hair lost all color completely. Before Conan fully realized what he had done, Uzumaki Nagato closed his eyes for the very last time, a faint smile adorning his face. The world turned silent, if only for a second, while Conan looked at the now lifeless body of her last friend. Why? Why had he used that jutsu, while he was already on the verge of death? What had he meant, passing them on? A deep gasp shook her from her thoughts. She vaguely remembered herself fighting with someone. Kunai were thrown from every direction. For each enemy that was taken down, 2 more sprang up. It was hopeless. Something warm was running down her back, and moving suddenly became a lot more difficult. Desperation that she perhaps would never again see him again. She had been injured, and soon felt herself growing tired, her movements sluggish, her limbs powerless, and yet she tried to defend herself. Against whom? She didn't really remember. It was as if a blood-red haze had clouded her mind. The next thing she remembered was sitting somewhere, in the middle of nowhere, all alone. It was dark. As she walked and walked, seemingly forever, she found herself a little campfire. She called, hoping for someone to answer her, but no one had been there. She had been all alone. The fire offered some warmth and light in this cold and dark area, which she welcomed happily. She wasn't sure where she was, nor why she was where she was, but at least this fire made this spot somewhat tolerable. Only now did she notice the log lying close to the fire. It was lonely here, with nothing to do. First, she had feared that the fire would run out, that she'd once again be left alone in this endless darkness. She didn't know how much time passed, but the fire kept going. Sometimes she heard vague voices in the distance, calling out names she didn't know. She tried to shout back, but no one ever responded. Likewise, she occasionally thought she saw silhouettes of people move around in the darkness. But no one ever stepped into the light which her fire spread, so she was left alone, with little more left to her than her thoughts. Most of them revolved around the person she loved, some of the others focused on the person she admired, the ones who were her friend, and the relatives whom she had lost. But most of the time she thought about the person she loved. She longed for him, wondering where he'd be. Then again, she didn't know where she was, so she had no idea how she was supposed to reach out to him either. As if her longing was manifested and became reality, pain spread through her body. Her arms, legs, torso, on several places all over her body she felt as if she was stabbed. The worst ones, however, were the places in her face. Her nose, her cheeks, it was as if someone just pushed a kunai into her flesh. The pain was too much, and soon she felt herself slip into unconsciousness. When she finally woke up, she had no idea of how much time had passed. Her body still hurt, and that sense of wrongness spreading from those places remained, but well, people could grow accustomed to pain, to some degree at least. Having been unconscious for some time, her body felt rather cold, so she scooped closer to the fire. Time passed, but she couldn't really say that she began to feel any warmer. She couldn't truly describe how she felt, other than by saying that she felt as if she wasn't completely here, as if part of herself was still somehow connected to someplace else. Was it a genjutsu? Dispelling failed, so she thought not. How long have I even been here? She asked herself while she shivered next to the fire. She'd almost been tempted to just sit in the fire itself. Where was she? Nowhere. Were there any ways to see the passing of time? No. There were no stars, no moon, no sunrise or sunset. There was nothing at which she could orient, other than the fire next to which she sat. She was stuck, so she just sighed and kept waiting. She had no clue who or what she was waiting for, but still she felt like she had to wait until she could move on. Bored, she started to hum songs she remembered from when she was a little girl, songs that her sister had taught her. But eventually she ran out of songs. She didn't want to repeat the ones which she had heard her father sing at the times he had consumed one bottle of sake too many. So, she did what she could do best. Draw. With a little bit of charcoal which she took from the fire, she started to draw the face of her beloved on the ground. It was a bit silly, she thought, but somehow the sight of the bewhiskered and scarred boy calmed her. Her friends had been right. She had become lovesick. A sappy, madly in love, stupid teenage girl, and she did not regret a single moment of it. Sitting in a tree kissing, she mumbled the words of the childish song which her friend had used to tease her. I love you, Naruto-kun. Time passed, and she had drawn a few other faces, until something finally changed. Staring around her, she tried to figure out what had changed, but everything seemed to be exactly the same. Still. There. I felt it again, she exclaimed, not bothered at all that she was speaking out loud after this indeterminable time of solitude. It was a strange sort of pull. Strange, because it was unlike anything she had ever felt before. A normal pull was when someone would grab you by the wrist and pull you along. That sort of feeling. But this pull was not focused on one spot. Whatever it was, it pulled every fiber of her being to some place. Confused by what it was, she considered resisting the sensation, and to try to drag herself back to her fire. But whoever it was, for some odd reason she couldn't say that it felt wrong. A blinding light enveloped her, and suddenly she was in a world of pain. She tried to see, but either it was completely dark, or she was blind. She gasped, and began to panic. She heard voices, but couldn't focus on the sounds, making it all one big blur of noise. She tried to move, but her body barely reacted. Then someone touched her neck, and her consciousness faded away. Bit by bit she woke up. She tried to open her eyes, but her vision was once again obscured. She did have her hearing back, however. From her left, at some distance, she heard someone breathe slowly, almost as if that person was asleep. Closer to her right a similar sound could be heard, although that person was more restless, mumbling unintelligible things every now and then. Judging by the sound of the voice, she thought that the person on her right was female. Where was she? Unable to see, she tried to move. It went a little sluggishly, as if she was suffering from an extremely bad case of chakra exhaustion. With some effort she got her arm to move. It was a bit awkward at first, but once she got the blood flowing it went a little easier. The limb still felt limp, but at least it moved. By touch she tried to figure out why she couldn't see. It turned out her head was wrapped in some kind of cloth. Bandages? No, she couldn't recall having sustained a head injury. Could she? When she tried to figure it out, she only found out that her memories were a complete mess. She remembered some kind of campfire. But there was also something about being attacked by many white humanoid creatures. It was all so surreal, as if she had just woken up from a bad dream. She fiddled clumsily with one hand, but that ended up in failure. So, she focused on her other arm. Just like her right, the left arm first needed some movement to get the hang of it. These were her arms, yes, but something was wrong. What, she couldn't say, but something had definitely changed. Everything felt familiar, yet different at the same time. With 2 hands at her disposal, she eventually managed to get rid of the bandages which covered her face. She blinked. Blinked again. Yes, she could see, but what on earth was going on? It's like everything is emitting a faint light. The colors are different too, she noted, trying to figure out what was happening to her. Little by little she managed to focus, trying to look past the blur of lights and see the forms and colors which she was used to see. Is that Suiren? She heard her own raspy voice, barely more than a whisper. Her friend was sitting next to her, having dozed off into an uneasy sleep. Suiren? She tried again, this time a little louder. A confused snore was her answer, quite unladylike for the otherwise calm and composed Suiren. Suiren? A third attempt was more successful. Suiren's eyes flew open, and when she looked at her friend she fell from the chair on which she had been sleeping, with a particularly squeamish scream. Someone else rushed in, while the breath of other person in the room indicated that that person had woken up, although remaining calm. She couldn't really see that person, as there was too much light surrounding him or her. This new arrival, shrouded in a soft yellow, was more visible than the others. Too visible, actually. With a shock she recalled her assailants. She raised her arms, intending to shield herself, when something else happened. Chakra strained and struggled, forcing its way through her tenketsu, until it reached her eyes. Before she realized what she did, the girl who was approaching her was sent back flying. Ajisai! Suiren exclaimed. See, calm down. What did you? Are you okay? Ajisai heard a muffled reply, but couldn't really make sense of what had just happened. It was as if she had created some kind of force field around her, with that chakra within her eyes, which had forced the yellow-shrouded girl back. 2 more people entered, both radiating a strong light. One was red-brownish, while the other was a cold blue. The person at her left, the one with the greenish light around him or her, now moved, although the red-brown person ordered him to stay put. At least, Ajisai figured that green was male, judging by the muffled reply. Red-brown was female, and moved to green while the area around her hands started to glow with a blinding brightness. Turning away, Ajisai groaned and closed her eye. In that time Blue moved next to her, and helped her to sit up straight. It hurt, the movement, but Ajisai figured that she'd get better soon, just like with her arms. Blue remained silent, although quite close. Then it was as if her light dimmed, and Ajisai saw who was sitting next to her. Titenshi-sama? Ajisai gasped. What, where? Calm down, Ajisai, Conan said with a tenderness which Ajisai had never heard from the woman before. Why did you take off your bandages? She moved and gently placed her hand underneath Ajisai's chin, moving the girl's head as if she was inspecting her. Tsunade-sama, Jiraiya-sensei, could you both try to master your chakra? It would make it easier for Ajisai to get accustomed to seeing chakra. As seeing chakra? Ajisai blurted out. Why would I be able to see? Oh, she gasped that last bit out, slack-jawed when Conan held up a little mirror. With orange hair and purple eyes, it was more like she saw a stranger staring back at her. The girl shouldn't be moving around already, red-brown Tsunade spoke up. Calm down, Haim, Conan knows what she's doing. Green Jiraiya stopped Tsunade's protests. Ajisai saw Suiren return into the tent carrying the unfortunate girl who had been hurled out by Ajisai's unintentional attack. I remember her, Ajisai said shakily. She was one of the Zetsu who... Suiren? Where is Fu? A strained silence followed, until Suiren finally opened her mouth again, visibly forcing herself to speak. Ajisai, I'm sorry but Fu, she didn't make it. Zetsu ambushed your team, Conan informed Ajisai. While he posed as the team of Konoha shinobi that was near. Yamanaka Ino was one of them, thus one of the ones whom Zetsu copied. I still can't fathom that anyone would sink that low, Jiraiya grumbled. The man was still forced to stay in bed, as Tsunade insisted he required rest in order to recover, even though he thought he could get out already. But an angered Tsunade was not easily ignored, and after the long talk that they had just had, Jiraiya wasn't willing to test the limits of their fragile friendship just yet. He knew that they had both messed up, and both still needed to truly forgive the other. But at least they've made a first tentative step. Just be glad that Naruto-kun eventually saw through the deception, Ino spoke up, confusing Ajisai with the usage of that particular honorific. And why was the blonde avoiding looking at her? Was it because she had attacked her? Ajisai felt rather uneasy about it. Still, the girl named Ino talked about Naruto, and about a possible deception. Where is Naruto-kun? Ajisai asked. Well, it sounded more like a demand, but she didn't care. All that mattered was that she could see him again. The awkward silence that followed filled her with dread. She had just heard that one of her best friends had died. She still hadn't truly processed that, and now, her heart pounded as she waited for the hesitation to end. Zetsu has taken him, Conan eventually decided to word it that way. No, Naruto isn't dead. But Zetsu has somehow parasitized on his body, controlling Naruto. Including Naruto's abilities. That is how Zetsu managed to get away. I think it is best to start describing the entire situation to her, Conan, Jiraiya sighed. Frankly, I think that Ino and Suiren also deserve to know what happened. Hell, I have questions about it all, as bits and parts are still unclear, even though Tsunade described the whole thing to me. I told you as much as I knew, Tsunade grumbled. Very well, Conan sighed. Only now did Ajisai notice that the woman wasn't wearing her Akatsuki cloak. She wore a loose plain black cloak on top of a navy blue robe and a pair of blue pants. Had she paid attention to it, Ajisai would also have noted that Conan was no longer wearing her ring. I think the easiest part is to start at the point which you last remember, Ajisai. My memories are rather fuzzy, the girl admitted. Being distracted by seeing all those colors around her didn't help her focus either. There were so many things that came to mind, but she pushed them away. Right now she just wanted to know what happened to Naruto, and how he could be freed. That is understandable, Conan said with a surprisingly sad expression. Ajisai, I know this sounds strange, but you did not escape Zetsu's ambush. Only Suiren did. You died. Looking around, Ajisai thought that the others would make remarks on this, but even Suiren's expression only showed a sad grimace. Still, hearing the news that she had died was bizarre, and if anyone but Conan had told her, she would have laughed at it. Still, she wasn't dead right now, so something must have happened, right? Did Pain, Amigekure's Kami, rescue her? Zetsu ambushed you and your team while wearing those disguises, and showed Naruto an amended recording of the attack. I suspect that his plan was to set Naruto against Konoha, which nearly succeeded, had Suiren and Ino not intervened. We found him, Ajisai, Suiren nodded slowly. We nearly died in doing so, but we managed to convince him. He had already left Akatsuki, claiming that he had gotten his memories back, but he was still dangerously unstable is the best word to describe his state of mind at that point. He killed that freak Kakuza like he was nothing, and stated that he had just slain Orochimaru and wiped out an entire base of Otogekure shinobi, Ino added. To say that he was hurt by your death would be an understatement. But we managed to explain that he was deceived. Naruto-kun said he was from Konoha, Ajisai mumbled. His memories, how, was he alright? Not really, Tsunade said bluntly. He was suicidal, as far as I saw. He first thought that Ino killed you, and that was probably the worst thing that could have happened from his perspective. After all, before he left Konoha and died in Zetsu's first attempt to control him, Naruto and Ino were rather close. After that, you and him got engaged, so I don't want to think of the way that would have hurt him. Enough to trigger his memories. Apparently, Conan remained calm, though underneath her stoic voice Ajisai could hear a tremor of sadness. He rejoined Konoha, and together with the other 4 greater hidden villages he launched an attack on Amigekure. An attack that Zetsu exploited to create a lot of chaos. Naruto wished to stop Akatsuki, having seen through part of Zetsu's scheme. This led to a battle between Naruto and Nagato. You know Nagato as Pain, Jiraiya supplied, seeing the girl's confusion. AIM lost the war, but after I surrendered our forces to Konoha our losses were still somewhat limited, Conan continued. Our village could have been razed, the people slaughtered, but we can count ourselves lucky that the villages decided to accept our surrender. Except Kumo, Jiraiya frowned worriedly. Have you heard anything from them, Haim? I received word today that Kumogakure has declared war on Iwabakure, although I dare say that it could just as easily have been the other way around. After all, from the reports we got it was the Reikage who killed the Tsuchikage, before the granddaughter of the Tsuchikage killed the Reikage. Zetsu, Conan replied pointedly. The whole situation stank of his deception. Just as I suspect that it is Zetsu who is behind the unrest within Kirigakure. Sunigakure lost over half of its forces during the war. Kiri is on the verge of civil war, and Kumo and Iwa are at each other's throats. Don't forget Konoha, Tsunade said wearily. The council is pushing me to exploit the weakness of the other nations. The fools. I couldn't find any hints of Zetsu's involvement, Conan muttered. But it is impossible to say whether or not he plays a role in this. Only Nagato and Naruto seem to be effective at detecting Zetsu. She looked at Ajisai. That returns me to you, Ajisai. You see, Nagato possessed the Rinnegan, a dojutsu which granted him a range of exceptionally strong abilities. This is why you, and most of Amigekure, knew him as Kami-sama. In any case, he believed that a clash between himself and Naruto was inevitable, so he readied his 6th path of pain. These 6 paths are 6 bodies that carried chakra receivers, through which Nagato controlled the bodies and transferred part of his power. Looking at her bandaged arms, and having seen the injuries on her face which were still in the process of healing, Ajisai reached a rather morbid conclusion. Pain-sama used me against Naruto-kun. He did. You were one of the 6 paths of pain. Yes, Conan nodded sadly. I disagreed. But it was only until it was too late that Nagato finally understood the errors of his way. Naruto defeated Nagato. But both were so tired that Zetsu was able to somehow grab control of Naruto's body, after which he tried to steal Nagato's Rinnegan. I stopped that, together with Tsunade-sama, she gestured to the Hokage. And after that, Nagato was dying. He had asked too much of himself, and his body couldn't handle the strain anymore. When he came to understand the situation, he sacrificed himself in order to revive you, Ajisai. Why me? Ajisai eventually asked, stunned. There are many reasons. Conan decided to avoid discussing the emotional aspects behind Nagato's decision, or at least what she thought had driven him to do what he had done. But the most prominent reason is that you were the only one compatible with his dojutsu. Naruto destroyed the other bodies, so only you were left. I presume you already noticed your new eyes and your changed hair color? Ajisai nodded sheepishly, not seeing the point. Your eyes are Nagato's Rinnegan. Because you were one of Nagato's 6 paths, he knew you were compatible. After all, he used some kind of process to prepare the bodies so that they were of optimal use to him. I cannot say that I understand the specifics, but from what Tsunade-sama said, Nagato somehow managed to alter you at the molecular structure. He changed you genetically, so that you could use the power of one of Nagato's paths, and carry the replica of the Rinnegan which he gave to each of his 6 paths. Those are changes no human can survive, so he would never have been able to do it to himself, Tsunade clarified. But you, Ajisai, were dead at the time, so there were no restraints to what he could alter. Although I dare say that you function as a regular human being in any other sense of the word. But you Tenketsu were altered significantly. It is why your body will most likely feel very strange at first. Still, because pain changed your body to that degree, I managed to transplant the Rinnegan to you without any real issues. In fact, I dare say that you are even more fit to use those eyes that he was, because unlike him you do not show any signs of rejecting the foreign tissue. He gave his life to bring me back? Ajisai stammered. For the first time she truly considered the possibility of having been dead. Had that been why she had been in that darkness? Because of this dojutsu? There are less noble reasons for it too, Jiraiya, blunt as ever, told her. It was guilt. Guilt for what he did to you. Guilt, because of the way he used you, and made Naruto fight your animated corpse. As much as I am relieved that my wayward student at least managed to come to his senses, shortly before his demise, I cannot condone what he has done. We will need time, Ajisai, to sort this all out. I will personally help you, to the best of my abilities, to adapt to your new eyes, Conan promised. Because we need to stop Zetsu. We need to free Naruto, for which we would need all the help we can get. Next to that, we face the risk that Zetsu will still try to grab the Rinnegan, so you need to be able to defend yourself. The magnitude of the news they had just fired at her finally began to sink in. I told you that we should have given her more time to recover, Tsunade muttered, quickly checking Ajisai's vitals. The girl had passed out, and if not for Conan's help she would have fallen out of the hospital bed. She's completely exhausted. She removed the bandages, and used the Rinnegan for the first time. Keeping information from her could have been dangerous, Conan disagreed. You saw how she instinctively used Shinra Tensei, weak as it was, against Ino. Imagine how she could have responded to the news if her chakra reserves had been replenished. I will help you, Jiraiya sighed. You'll need all the help you can get to quickly train the girl. And I was the one who trained Nagato, remember? I'm sorry, Jiraiya, but as soon as you are able I need you to start locating Naruto and Zetsu. We cannot afford to give him too much time. Tsunade abandoned her role as medic, and acted as the Hokage she was. We know Zetsu will need time, and our worst estimates are that it will take no longer than a month until he will have finished the sealing of the 3 Biju that Akatsuki captured. And then there is the matter of the Kyuubi. We have no clue how Zetsu is going to extract the Kyuubi while still keeping Naruto alive. Tsunade-sama, does Zetsu still need Naruto-kun after that? Ino asked the question which Tsunade rather ignored. Zetsu wishes to bring the Kyuubi back, so why would he need Naruto-kun? Control, most likely, Jiraiya answered for Tsunade. The Mokuton Kekkei Genkai is renowned for its ability to subjugate the Biju, so it is highly likely that it would have a similar effect on the Ten Tails. But I agree that we need to hurry. Naruto is our first priority. If we can free him from Zetsu, Zetsu can't continue its plan. Ino, I will leave you to finish healing the injuries which Ajisai's chakra receivers have left. Similarly, you will need to constantly check whether her body accepts these new eyes. We've both seen how the way pain used her body resulted in her original eyes being burned away. That made the transplant easier, true, but we know nothing about what the strain of the Rinnegan might cause. Remember, where she only used one of the 6 paths before, she now is exposed to the power of them all. Also, if possible, and only after you have her permission, it might be wise to check her mind. I cannot say that I have ever read any research on people who have been revived after their deaths, and considering the potential of her power, we cannot risk her to be mentally unstable. Yes, Tsunade-sama. While she felt a bit conflicted, Ino accepted her orders. While she was nowhere near the level of Shizen, not even mentioning Tsunade herself, Ino did pick up a lot of things with regard to medical ninjutsu. Considering how Ajisai's complicated wounds had already been closed, the injuries caused by the chakra receivers had given Tsunade quite a headache to undo. All that was left was for Ino to speed up the healing process and monitor her health. Swearin, you stay with Ajisai and Ino. Tsunade turned to the former Ainin. Ajisai will need time to process all that has happened to her. You are the most familiar face which she has in this place, so your support to her will be vital. With everything she's been through, she will need friends more than any method of healing we can provide. Beyond that, I want you to use your abilities as a sensor to keep Ajisai safe. Tsunade-sama, I will return to my people and make the arrangements for repairing Amigekure. Konan looked at the Hokage. After that, I think it is wisest to bring Ajisai back to Konoha. The defenses there will be stronger. I will act as ambassador of AIM while I teach Ajisai all I know about the Rinnegan's abilities. So I was planning to leave a medium-sized force, under command of my son. Shikaku finished. Shikamaru might still be lacking in experience, but he is the most intelligent shinobi which we can spare for the job. Agreed, Tsunade sighed. Meetings like these were boring, really boring, but an unavoidable part of the job. Shizen had already gone back to Konoha, leading the convoy that transported the injured and deceased back home. With Ino overlooking Ajisai, Tsunade had to do everything on her own. A quite irritating fact on top of that was that Shizen had accidentally forgotten to bring along any form of alcohol except for the sort used to disinfect medical equipment. But even Tsunade wasn't crazy enough to drink that. Suna might make a claim on AIM territory, but with the war brewing between Iwagakure and Kumogakure, as well as the lack of leadership within IWA, it seems more likely that Suna focuses on defense. Especially after the losses they suffered, and the lack of a strong leader, Suna is not really in a position to challenge us, Shikaku clarified. I would propose we push and annex Amigekure completely, rather than merely making a puppet state out of them. Yes, I know you wish to exploit the current situation. I, however, prefer to seek a diplomatic option. Tsunade sighed once more. She was tired of the people arguing for more conflict, just because the other villages showed vulnerabilities right now. Shikaku, do not forget we just united our forces in an allied army, for the first time in the existence of the hidden village system. An alliance which led to the Reikage betraying us and murdering the Tsukage, Shikaku retorted. The common threat that somewhat unified our villages is gone. Pain died, Amigekure is conquered, and you yourself told us that Zetsu fled the scene. As the strategist of Konohagaku no Sato, logic demands of me that I advise you to exploit the current imbalance of power. Never before have we been given such an opportunity. Enough, Tsunade waved her hand dismissively. It is futile arguing about it now. Our forces have to heal and rest first. I'm sure the council will be more than eager to talk about warfare once we return to the village. As you wish, Shikaku conceded, though visibly displeased. While not a warlike man, Shikaku recognized an opportunity when he saw it, and being the Nara he is, he hated to waste the chance to do things with the least amount of effort possible. The idea that peace could be achieved through diplomacy was, to him, naive, especially when there was a window of opportunity to create a peace by vanquishing their foes. There is one last matter which I need to bring to your attention, Hokage-sama. Yes? Our guests. I assigned Madogai and his team to keep an eye on them. Ugh, it is an unnecessary precaution, but fine. Tsunade rolled her eyes. Neither Konan nor Ajisai will try something, while Swearin is no real threat. As you say, Hokage-sama, Shikaku bowed and left, but looked completely unconvinced. Truth be told, Tsunade couldn't really blame him. Konoha had suffered losses during the assault on AIM as well. With Konan being a former member of Akatsuki, the right hand of Pain himself even, distrust towards her was to be expected, and she was pretty sure that Shikaku had a good idea of who Konan truly was. Still, Tsunade feared that these annoyances would soon grow into far greater problems, once the council could make its demands. Looking down at the table that temporarily served as her desk, Tsunade reread the letter which Kuratsuchi had sent her on behalf of Iwadakure. Why do I get the feeling they'll take the hat from me once I announce that IWA requested a formal alliance? Tsunade muttered. Too many are still caught up in old grudges to ever accept that. Fools. Dan died at IWA hands, how do they think I feel? She scowled. Still, she'd try everything in her power to get this alliance authorized. Not for the last time did Tsunade regret her years of drunken stupor, in which the council had taken power from her, bit by bit, while she was too inebriated to notice what was going on. If only she had listened to Shizen and Ino. Perhaps I should keep Konan and Ajisai away from the village first, before someone does something stupid, the Senju sighed. A military leader who couldn't fully trust her own military, she wondered what her old sensei would have done in this position. If only pain had revived you too, Sarutobi sensei.